keeps on
Are
catching.
people shooting their guns off where you're at, Michael?
No, they have enough mortars.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the it's not New Year's, it's Independence Day. Fireworks, it gets confusing. It's Independence Day here in the United States of America, where I have recently resettled. Welcome to my lovely panel. And how are y'all guys doing, all right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Pleased to hear it.
Noticing that it's the holiday.
You don't feel like you're missing out on a holiday celebration, do you? I mean, is there special happening where you're at or anything?
No, and usually that's like this is usually the holiday I get together with my family, but because of the coronavirus, I can't really do that this year, which feels kind of weird to me.
Sure.
Yeah, I haven't really celebrated the 4th of July since I left Vermont back in high school, like right after high school. There used to be a big neighborhood thing. I was raised in this tiny little beach community. We'd have a barbecue, a communal barbecue, that kind of thing, and then everyone would watch the fireworks. And then after a while, it just turned into everyone watches the fireworks. And now it's turned into, well, if I go visit my parents in Vermont, we might go see the fireworks. Otherwise, I don't bother. The 4th of July is a non-event here.
Do your parents still live out east then?
Sorry, say that again?
Do your parents still live out east?
Yes and no. They sort of have dual citizenship with Mexico now. Like they spend at least half the year in Oaxaca. So they're usually in Vermont in the summertime because, wow, is it hot in Oaxaca right now? But of course, the virus hit while they were still there and they couldn't get back to Vermont. If the virus hadn't hit, I'd probably be there right now myself. And I think you looked frozen for a second there.
So
and again.
It happens occasionally, but hey, there we are. So hello, Rob. Welcome to the group. Hello, Green Machine. Hello, Phoenix Rider. Hello, welcome. And happy 4th of July to y'all.
By the way, Paul.
Yeah.
Welcome home.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. I second that.
Yeah, it's very cool being here in Colorado. This is where I live is very beautiful. There's hardly anybody up here at all. I look around right now out the window and I actually can't see any other structures. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, I'd say it's a different lifestyle though, because I've just been living in paved world where you can walk 2 minutes to everything. So that's going to take a little getting used to of sort of being, distant from not just civilization, but even like a corner shop, So.
Oh, wow, it's that far from civilization.
Yes and no. I mean, it's like a 15 or 20-minute drive down into Boulder, but there's nothing in between. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember
driving down the canyon,
When my age was still in the single digits, my parents and I lived in a much more rural part of Vermont. Right before I started first grade, we lived in the Screaming Wilderness, and I know exactly the kind of thing you're talking about, where it's like, yeah, 15 minutes in that direction, you'll finally see another house.
Yeah, pretty much. We do have neighbors on the mountain here, but they're pretty far apart, and I haven't really even explored the whole of a property yet. There's 11 acres here, which is kind of cool. And I'm going to go collecting great big massive chunks of quartz, and I'm going to build a monument in the front yard just to establish my presence. I live here now, this is the monument to me. Sure. Why not?
I don't know, I need to get like a spherical bit of crystal just so I can call it my tennis courts.
Oh, dear.
Nice, I like that.
Green Machine says, who's going to have a real winter? Well, I mean, I'm definitely going to have a pretty, it's going to take some getting used to. I haven't driven in snow since I lived in Alaska, which is like 34 years ago. And I'm not a big fan of driving in snow, I have to say. In fact, I hate driving in snow. The only reason I don't like snow is because I don't like driving in snow. Otherwise, I think snow is great. If you could just especially when you first wake up in the morning and there's like a nice soft blanket of white everywhere and it hasn't been trampled on or walked on by the birds or anything like that. It's just a nice blanket of soft, velvety white. And then the cars in the feet and, it's just. No,
Do you remember Anakin's speech in Attack of the Clones about how much he hates sand? I feel very similarly about snow. Again, raised in Vermont, I hate snow so fucking much.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul, we're going to pass the blanket level pretty quick.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure. I actually think it's going to snow more here than it did when I lived in Alaska. Because I lived in Juneau, which is right on the coast, so it's relatively warm. So it does stick, obviously, in the heart of the winter, but not like it does up here. I mean, there's still snow on the mountain right over there. So yeah, it's July, so yeah.
How long were you in Alaska for, Paul?
I lived in Alaska for 2 years. I loved Alaska really.
Nice.
The only reason I left Alaska was because I realized at the time that I was never, ever, ever going to meet Miss Right in Alaska.
Oh, why did you in the first place?
The competition for women, if you're a single man looking for a woman in Juneau has the highest proportion of ratio of women to men in the whole state because it's the capital city, all right? And the ratio of women to men back when I lived in there in the middle of the 80s was 4 women for every 7 men, all right? And that's the highest in the state. There's some towns in Alaska where there's 10 men for every single woman. Imagine being her.
Yeah, and she's a lesbian.
Right. Probably for her own safety.
It could be, yeah. It could be because I traveled up there, and I remember when I did a tour around. I did like one of those like Alaskan cruises, and I remember I met a lot of tour guides who kind of went up there just to work, and then they just kind of stayed up there for a while because they loved it so much.
Oh, Alaska's beautiful for sure. It really hooks you.
It is.
The wildlife, and actually quite like the people up there because about half the people in Alaska were like me. They came from somewhere else. And so most of us come for the career. Like I had a radio job up there back in the day. But yeah, I realized quite quickly that I didn't have enough going on to bag the women. The competition was too fierce for me. So I didn't have enough class, basically.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just weird, but I like civilization so much more than nature. Like I would give so much to live in a city that looks like something out of science fiction.
Right.
You know, I love technology. I love sleek buildings. You know, whenever I see people talking about how much they love like old cathedrals, I'm like, you mean the ones with all the little knobbly stuff and gargoyles all over them? They're so busy. You know, I can't do it. And then people say, well, I love nature and being out in the trees. And you get those memes that say, would you live out in the screaming wilderness for $1 million if you were there for a year and no internet? And I'm like, no, but I would totally live in that same cabin if it looked like something out of Star Wars. Absolutely.
There's some pretty amazing cities in China, you know. I mean, Wuhan, I don't know if you saw Wuhan city during the virus, but like Wuhan, when the lockdown ended, they did the whole city lights thing, and the Wuhan skyscrapers all have running lights going up and down. They can show like movies and shit right across the whole city for blocks and blocks and blocks. Like it's incredible. Google it, Wuhan city lights, and check it out. It's pretty impressive stuff.
That sounds pretty cool. Mind you, I have to learn to speak Chinese, which I think is kind of difficult. But you know,
what you got here, Kate?
Well, it's just examples of the kind of cities I'd live in.
I like the underwater city.
Yeah.
Be pretty amazing. You know,
and of course, the floating city kind of reminds me of Cloud City from The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, I think the real estate in a place like that would be pretty prohibitive. You'd have to be filthy, stinking rich to live there.
True.
Yeah. Yeah. Oops, wrong. I got the wrong thing now. Hang on. Bang. There we go. So yeah, hi Rob, how's your campaign going?
Pretty quiet right now. I'm just waiting for the primary. So.
And is there any?
I lack context. What are you talking about?
I'm running for freeholder.
Okay.
Freeholder is county.
Oh, okay.
And is your competition guy, the rapper guy, is he still in it as well?
He's still in it. Found out the other day though that he is not a registered Democrat. And he's running. He's running for the Democratic vote. And that's all fine and good, but when it comes to certifying the vote after the primary, he will be listed as an independent. So
That's interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, but I mean, have you guys reached a good understanding? Yeah.
no,
Yeah. That was pretty conclusive. No,
I mean, I tried. I mean, I met with him, sat down with him. We talked, and he seemed like he was like we were on the same page. And then he decided he's gonna do his own thing and whatever. So I mean, from my point of view, I put my hand out in partnership, and he spit in my face. So at this point, I really don't care. I mean, it's just like
yeah.
he
You make
wants
the effort. You make the effort.
Yeah, I mean, if he wants to stay in the race and he wants to split the vote and guarantee that a Republican, I mean, a Republican was going to win anyway. It's just mathematically very difficult for anything other than that to be the outcome. But since he's not willing to play nice, it is what it is. I mean, like I have this information that he apparently isn't aware, or his campaign manager isn't aware that he's not a registered Democrat. And I can go to him and tell him, look, the outcome that you're looking for is not going to happen because you're not going to be on the ballot as a Democrat. And I can do that. And I can save him and his campaign team that embarrassment. But no.
I can't even picture the Fox News jerk fest that would happen if this news came out and they found out.
Well, I mean,
oh, look, they're splitting the vote. The guy's not actually a Democrat, blah, 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 blah. Oh, the media circus would be insane.
There is a local, I don't want to call it a news organization. It's a local right-wing circle jerk.
Blog or something?
It calls itself a newsletter. And they're always attacking anybody that's a Democrat. And so far, they've attacked this guy twice. And they've said nothing about me, which I don't know is good or bad. I guess good as in they haven't had the chance to tarnish me yet. Bad as in they haven't noticed me.
Yeah, the whole bad news, bad publicity is still good publicity.
Yeah,
I think, was it an Oscar Wilde quote? Was the only thing worse than being talked about behind your back is not being talked about?
Yeah. So I mean, when this all goes down after the primary and he finds out that he's not a Democrat, they're going to have a field day with it. Yeah, I'm sure they will. They'll have a field day with it. But, I mean, considering that the person running, there's two people that are running his campaign. One of them is the former county chair for the Democratic Party. She should know. I mean, she was in a position where she should absolutely know to at least make sure that the candidate that she's supporting can actually run the way he wants to run as a Democrat.
Well, as I recall from last week, she's got a chip on her shoulder, as I recall. Michael, I know you've been a delegate. Have you ever considered running for office in the past?
I have, but I've considered it something that would limit me. In much the way that Rob could make the argument that his opponent should not run for office because he likes being a protester and likes being an activist. I like being an activist too. I've said way too many things on the internet to be running for office because there are way too many clips of me out there. And also, I have a profession. And so let's say I ran for city council and city council only pays like $15,000 a year for your stipend and all that time that it takes out of your life. My profession pays me way better than that. So I think I'm doing good in the world doing what I'm doing, and I can help out people's campaigns on the outside and just pick somebody who's got a good message and help them out. There's a lot of people that don't want to be a part of anything unless they can be the chief, but I'm one that can get behind someone and just support something good and not feel like because I'm not the one who got voted in that nothing good happened. But there's a lot of politics that I've had to deal with, especially in the atheist community, where when a disagreement happened, all of a sudden a new organization is born with a new president to it, president for life, because they're the one who started the organization. In fact, they're pretty much the only person in the organization. You know, and I've too many of those splinter groups splinter off to really not see that there's something wrong with that sort of vanity where you have to be the one.
Well, everyone on the screen right now is part of what used to be called the atheist community back in the day, and I started to get out of that when I had my last girlfriend. But there was a thing that happened. I think it was in 2012. What was it? Atheism Plus.
Oh, don't get me started.
Oh yes, I remember that.
I mean, what was that all about, really? I never really understood. I mean, I guess it's like the first sort of step into intersectionality. Is that a good shorthand way to put it?
Well, the way I understood it was that a bunch of folks, mostly from the atheist experience, wanted to start doing charity as atheists. That was mostly what it was about. And my personal position was that just hands fuel to the people who want to say atheism is a religion. Like, it's great to be an atheist and do charity, but to do charity in the name of atheism, I think misses the point in a way. But that was not a message that was well received. So,
well, and the thing is, I felt that the way that I think that what they were trying to do was probably a good thing. I think the way they went about it probably wasn't. But what got for me, so because the way it came off is it sounded like, well, they were the arbiters of everything, everything social justice, and so I was a little turned off. But on the flip side, I also didn't care. Because so basically my attitude is, okay, if I don't feel like that's a space for me, I just won't be part of it. But then people went nuts, and that's what pissed me off, is not so much them, because I was like I said, whatever, they bothered me, but whatever, didn't bother me that much. But the way people reacted to it was so over the top, and then that's when Thunderfoot and all those guys started making anti feminism videos and all this kind of stuff. But what gets me is that around that time too, I remember that there was a sudden push. It was almost like a badge of honor to say how you were not part of a community. And of course, we were part of a community. It was a YouTube atheist community. It wasn't a broader community. And I pointed out that, like, because people say, well, I don't like that person or this group or whatever. I said, the community doesn't mean just the people you like. I mean, I don't really bother with my neighbors, but I'm still part of the community with them. So, my thing, in fact, I made a video to that effect, but it was some people just was, and then what ended up happening was when people started like attacking even the idea of community, it helped. It wasn't the initiator, but it helped push us along to basically falling apart, because once we got rid of the idea of community, we didn't have one.
Well, I mean, I always figured like the only reason there is an atheist community in the first place is because religious people were being obnoxious about it. Like, if they could have left their religion in their pants and not bothered everyone else, there'd be no need for atheists to be anything other than just who they are offline. Agreed. But, so, I mean, we don't need a community, except that we do need a community. If you see what I'm saying.
Yes. Well, that's the thing, and that's the thing that made me upset, because I was like, look, the fact that we have differing views, there's people in the left wing, people in the right wing, and in the center, and there's all this stuff. That's okay, because the message to me was always about, at least while we were together, was to say, hey, look, we are the panoply of ideas. We're right, left, and center, but we have this one thing where we say, hey, look, religion should not have the exalted state in society that it does. And that's all that we agreed upon. But that was the one thing. And unfortunately, we were no longer able to kind of carry that message anymore, because everything, went to hell.
Right. Well, I mean, with Atheism Plus, I mean, a lot of the things that they were talking about, I mean, there was a logic behind it. Like, people believe in all these different things or belong to these different groups that have their roots or their basis is in some kind of religious thought. So it's just like, I am an atheist plus I believe that, women are equal pay for equal work, and body autonomy and pro-choice and all of these other issues and all these other things, which, yes, there's a logic behind it. And yes, if you're going to say that you don't believe in a God for reasons A, B, and C, well, then a lot of those other reasons, a lot of those other issues, the same logic applies. That you should support these things for same reasons A, B, and C. But people don't act logically always, and our beliefs aren't always logical. I mean, I think they thought there would be a huge number of people jumping on this bandwagon because of the logic, but that's not how people work. It's just
Well,
nice,
and I mean,
but it's not how we work.
There's a logic to the other side, okay, my side too, which is that there is nothing about atheism, about not having any God belief, that says, and therefore I should treat other people well. Like the therefore I should treat other people well, therefore I should do charity work. That all comes from me with religion or its absence completely irrelevant to the equation. But that was an idea I could not get across to anyone who was in support of Atheism Plus, is that I genuinely felt like it would cause some problems that I'd rather it wouldn't. Namely, the people who say, look, see, atheism really is a religion. I felt like that was handing them ammo, and I would have loved to have had a secular charity rather than an atheist organization charity, if you see the distinction.
Well, I get the distinction. I think the reason why, and that's part of the reason why they called it plus, because the idea was, okay, all this social justice thing is not part and parcel of atheism. However, and I think one of the big parts of that organization was the idea that a lot of the problems, a lot of the, obviously we know religion tends to be anti-woman. We know religion tends to be support racial bigotry and all sorts of stuff. So the idea is saying, hey, because we're atheists, we've thrown off the shackles of religiously instituted bigotry. And so we're going to, now that we're free of that, we're going to do that. And again, like my thing is the fact that, okay, they were just an organization. I don't think that they were ever trying to say, this is what atheism is. I think, again, I do agree with you, though, that they did package themselves badly, because the problem I had with them is when they said, we're atheists, but we do that. And I'm like, well, I believe in those things too, but you're making it sound like I have to be part of your organization to follow those things. And so to me, it was really the way they delivered the message was poor.
Well, that's a problem I've found on the left, like almost constantly, is that as much as I hate what the right stands for, they know how to message rather well. They know how to package it rather well. I mean, I've been saying lately that whenever the left comes up with an organization or an idea or a slogan, they want to name it something, run it by a bunch of linguists and punsters first to see if holes can be poked in it or it can be misconstrued in some way. I mean, remember the dude in Congress with the snowball said, see, there's no global warming, and then we had to change it to climate change. You get Black Lives Matter, and all of a sudden, no, all lives matter. And I'm like, if you'd given the organization or the idea a different name, you would have taken that ammo away from your opponents.
I think, and this is because that's kind of the way you steered it. It kind of steers into different things. So bear with me. So we're not really talking about Atheism Plus anymore. But the left, as far as messaging, one of the problems with the left and messaging is that the left is so broad and so diverse. There's so many different camps under that tent that whenever they come up with something for messaging that's supposed to be, en masse, they have to run it by everybody. So you can't say, this guy had this great slogan. Yeah, but you know what? The lesbians are going to be upset. Oh, crap, we can't do that. Well, how about this? No, you can't do that, because then the vegetarians are going to be upset.
Well, but that's not even where, I mean, like, I get what you're saying. It wasn't my objection, though. It wasn't the source of my objection. My objection was what will the right wing do with it? You know?
I stopped caring about that, because they're going to do that regardless of what we do. And so the thing here, here's a good example, Kate. Okay, and this is one I know that you guys. I'll say I suspect highly that everyone on the panel is probably for, except for maybe Michael. I don't know. But okay, Bernie's big message was the 1%. Actually, very good message, and it was on point. again, as the left, we're also our worst enemies. I heard people, but well, actually, the 1% is this, and it's really the top 10%. I'm like, shut up. And, it's like, come on, do we have to stab ourselves in the foot?
We have a habit of shooting our own message.
Yeah, and 1%, it was succinct. Yes, was everybody in the 1% totally riding high and stepping on people's heads in the big corporations? No, but it's close enough for government work, as they say, and it makes the point. And I thought, I thought was probably one of Bernie's best talking points was the 1%. It's understandable, it gets to the point. But yeah, and it wasn't. And again, I expect shit to come from the right because it doesn't matter what we say, they're going to attack it. But when we're doing it ourselves, I'm like, no, that's the good one. Again, I remember, I don't agree with everything with Bernie, but that was one that I was like, yeah, that's a good message. That's a great message.
Well, even so, though, I mean, even if we can't 100% hamstring the right's attempt to misconstrue a slogan, we don't have to make it easy for them.
I agree with that.
Okay, good.
Well, and this is one thing, and this is something that back when the original Breakfast Club, the one when Rob was running it, and we had a few videos that came up about how you respond to various levels of injustice, and my position has always been, yes, you absolutely call it out, whatever it is, whether big, little. But how loudly you shout about it should be commensurate with the offense. And there are people, particularly on the left, who they can't distinguish between a little thing and a big thing, and they scream. And I'm like, well, that hurts, because people look at that and they see a little thing and they see you going, ah, and they go, wow. Okay, this person only has trivial concerns. So then when you're screaming about something that's important, they've already tuned you out because they assume, oh, well, they were screaming over some minor shit, so this thing is probably minor too.
Well, and it also doesn't help when you'll get people who get offended on behalf of people who can't give a shit. Well, like I've seen, people go, oh my gosh, we have to remove this racist thing that's going on. And the people who are being depicted are like, what are you talking about? That's okay. We don't care. Right. And yet you've got these Karens running around going, it's just like, stop it. Or maybe that's not a Karen, but you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, it's very paternalistic, and it comes to everything. Same thing I've seen with when it comes to women's issues, and there's self-titled feminist men who are, going out there and like, I'll save you. Like, no. Let the women tell us what they need. We'll be here for support if they ask for it. Just be their backup, but don't let them lead their fight. It's their fight. We're here to help, not to lead the fight and not to insert ourselves in their message.
Reminds me of the white girl that went off on me on Facebook.
Oh yeah. Oh God.
Details? I don't have context for that one. Details?
It's about my campaign. On my campaign page, this white girl left this message telling me that I should drop out of the race because the guy that's running against me is black, and by me staying in the race, I am squashing black voices with my whiteness.
And then when Peach and I responded, she effectively told us to shut the fuck up. So like the two black people in the conversation. So I was like, wow, and then she told some other guy, well, this, amplifying black voices is the hill I'm willing to die on. I'm like, if you're willing, you've already died on that hill of the self.
Yeah, right. Committed Harry Carey.
Actually, it brings me back to something that Agent Adout said, because I've had people tell me, oh, if you don't like it, just run for office. And I'm like, yeah, how is anyone ever going to get elected now when they've had the internet their whole life? They're probably on camera saying some really seriously stupid shit. Someone somewhere is going to dig it up. I mean, there's dirt on everybody. I think the only thing you can possibly do is own it. Like if I tried to run a campaign and someone dug up all those pictures of me rollerblading in the Fremont Solstice Parade, the one where everyone goes naked, I'd have to go, yeah, it was awesome. Have you ever been? You should totally try it. Because if I tried to distance myself from it, it would look so disingenuous. But there's probably other shit I've done or said online that would be deal breakers for most people. I'm sure that's true for most of us.
I actually think you're onto something there, because I think you're right. A lot of people, certainly the millennial generation in particular, have been living their lives out loud online since, puberty, at least, right? And the thing is,
Uh-oh.
Oh man.
The internet never forgets. So you might as well just own it. I think it's like back in the day when Bill Clinton was saying, hey, yeah, I smoked pot in high school, but I never inhaled, right? Everyone knew that was bullshit. But at least he was prepared to say, hey, I did this thing. Then George Bush becomes candidate, and both him and Al Gore both admitted that they smoked pot back in the day. And then Barack Obama, yeah, I smoked pot back today. And hey, maybe I did some coke as well. So I think this whole thing, everyone's got it passed, is we're already there, because when it happened with drugs already, the internet is just the next iteration of the same thing.
But in a way though, that's good, because here's the thing: back in the day, if you got caught out doing the thing that everybody else was doing, then yeah, you'd end up, because it was expected that you'd have to prostrate yourself and throw yourself on the mercy of the court. Whereas now, I don't think the millennials don't give a shit. I mean, like I don't know what percentage of millennials have been on Cam 4, but enough that it's like someone said, "Oh, well, you did porn," and they're like, "Oh yeah, they did too. You probably did too." Okay.
I scrubbed the internet. I scrubbed the internet. I went through my Facebook. I privated all my videos on YouTube. I went through everything, and if something comes out, yeah, I'll own it. But until that point, I've hidden as much away as I can, because I bet a lot of stuff out there.
Oh, but everyone knows about that one night in Reno. You know the night I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that gets me though, and I said this to a friend of mine recently, I was like, yeah, because I've there's too many videos of me shouting at people on the internet that but then he's like, think about that, Joe. I said, yeah, good point. Thanks to Chris Christie and Donald Trump. Who knows? Maybe the path for obese bombastic assholes is open up now.
Dream big, Joe. Dream big. Anything is possible.
Another reason why I wouldn't run for office is because I've been a member of both political parties, and even been a delegate for both political parties. As a delegate in the Republican Party, I was there as a spoiler, just trying to affect their policies in the most liberal ways I could, knowing full well that I didn't belong in that party. But anything you can do in Colorado Springs, in El Paso County, to have any sort of effect, because the Democrats are so crushed, So that's what I did, and so moving to Denver, I was able to join parties that I was a better fit in, but still, people could look back at my political record of being registered a Republican for years. They brought the same thing up about Elizabeth Warren. She wasn't a Democrat for years of her life.
And that's one thing that does drive me nuts on the left. We're constantly telling people that they should change and eschew whatever the right-wing nuttery that they follow. And then if they do, we're like, well, you're not really liberal. You're not really like, well, then why should anyone ever change if we're not going to? I mean, not to say you're going to open somebody with open arms, but at least give them the chance to prove themselves.
And again,
it is easy to doubt.
We've gone full circle again. I mean, it's the same thing with YouTube. We were talking about YouTube before, right? And the Atheism Plus and everything else. It's like it's true in our little universe, in our little microcosm, and it's true in society overall. We don't allow people to grow and change.
Although I have actually had some people say to me, like, okay, I've been watching your videos since you started, and your message has changed almost not at all. And I'm like, true. I mean, for good or ill, I stuck to my guns on a lot of things. But there are a couple of reasons that I could not run for office. Honestly, like, number one, you may have noticed I got a little bit of a temper. But number two, like, there's all these friends. Like, I know all these people where if you ask them a question about the real world, they usually know the answer. They know history, they know biology, they know geopolitics, they know warfare, this, that, and the other thing. Now, if you want some sci-fi fantasy trivia, you come to me. But those folks who've been reading encyclopedias since they were 5, they're probably better suited. Me, I could probably say, hey, here's a really great idea. And everyone in their hamster would say, yeah, it's a great idea. Too bad it's illegal. You know, that kind of thing. Like, too bad there's something in the state constitution that says we can't do it. I just don't have the knowledge base necessary to be an effective leader because I'd run into those walls all the time.
Well, there's two. I find there's two different types of people. Two main because there's variations and crossover. But there's the functional leader. They're the ones who know the stuff. They can, they know a lot of stuff, and they're like, do this and do that, and they've got ideas, and they understand the mechanism. And then there's the aspirational leader. They don't necessarily know all the nitty gritty, but they know how to talk to people, and they know how to motivate people. And either of those can work. The thing is that the aspirational leader has to understand their limitations, and they have to be able to know, okay, I don't know all this stuff, so I need to pull in the right people who can tell me, and I know who I'm intuitive enough that I know who to trust, who's bringing me the right information. And the sad part is we tend to actually follow aspirational leaders more than we do the functional leaders, because the functional stuff is boring. People don't. If you think about it, how much criticism did Bill Clinton get because he would do his State of the Union, he would do the laundry list. The thing about Bill Clinton is he kind of was able to do a bit of both. He actually had. But he kind of had gravitas to talk in an aspirational way, and he had the knowledge to be able to talk in a functional way, and that's why he was effective as he was. Even after being impeached, he still got stuff done. Not all the stuff I would want, and certainly I'm sure a lot of people in the panel wouldn't be happy about it, but he was effective even after that wounding.
Based on your breakdown, Barack Obama was the total package.
Yeah,
we talk about knowledge. He was knowledgeable inside and out. He knew everything about what he had to do. I mean, he's probably one of the most intelligent, knowledgeable people we've had in that office in a very, very long time. And aspirational. Holy cow.
Okay, I got differences with Obama just because he was the compromiser in chief. Like, I understand the need to compromise. I understand the need to haggle with the other side, obviously, because you'll never get anything done if they think that they don't have a voice at the table. But at the same time, if you come to the table starting with your bargain position, instead of shooting for the moon and letting them whittle you down until you get to the middle, if you start at the middle, then the only place to go is to the right. And that's what Obama did his entire presidency. And that's where I take issue with the fucker.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, the thing I would say not his entire presidency, but certainly most of his first term. And that's probably the most legitimate criticism of him, is that he offered, he did more than offer, the olive branch. He kind of gave him the olives too.
It was like when he was going for the ACA and everybody was just like, calling him a socialist. I mean, he should have said, okay, fuck yeah, socialist, and just gone full bore, single payer. I mean, they're going to call you a socialist anyway. Right. You might as well do it.
Well, just like with the death panels, which is ironic considering when the Republicans are like, let grandma die so we can charge the economy, actual death panels.
The death panels right now with the COVID, isn't it?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well,
and in Texas and Arizona and Florida any minute now.
And what's happening what's happening now is, of course, what was very predictable is that they're like, oh, we got to get back, we got to turn the economy back on, and they're all putting the brakes on because you know what? Because the thing is, if we start having a few thousand deaths a day, the economy is going to be dead anyway. Because at a certain point, a lot of people are just going to say, fuck it, I'm just going to stay home. Fuck it.
I think Kate was, just before you came on, Joe, Kate was basically saying the same thing about how, you want to go out and have that restaurant dinner, but do you dare when you know that other people are, how strict are the other people going to be with their social distancing, or is the restaurant going to try to for full capacity? Because most restaurants need, as far as I'm aware, need relatively full capacity just to stay open normally. So if you only have to operate at half capacity, but it still takes the same number of staff to keep your restaurant open, you're fighting a losing game.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the only solution would be to double the price of the food, but not increase the wages or anything. And so are people still going to come if the food is twice as expensive? Do you know what I mean?
The thing is, though, people are going to these restaurants. I mean, that was the story I was telling before we went on the air, was that I went to my favorite Mexican joint. They make this Diablo burrito that's like touching your tongue to a belt sander. It's brilliant. I love it. But I go in and because I had ordered over the phone. I was just going to get takeout. And I go in and there are families at almost every table with masks off, obviously, because they're eating, but they're breathing everywhere. And I'm sitting there going, wow, I can't even. I would never in a million. Like, I went home with my takeout and washed my hands like a goddamn surgeon before I even thought about it. So it's just crazy the way people throw caution to the wind like that.
My favorite steakhouse here, Rod's. I don't know if you've ever been there, Rod's Steakhouse in Morristown. Anyway, they have an event area where they do like weddings and stuff. So they opened with outdoor dining, which is where we're still at here in New Jersey. We did go. The tables are like 15 feet apart. They will not let you in. Like while you're walking through the place, you have to have masks on. I also had gloves on. The staff is all masks and gloves. And you're far enough away from everybody else that while you're dining, but you get up from that table, you have to put your mask on, and they will, sanction you if you don't. So that actually worked pretty well.
I'd like to interrupt slightly. I'm sorry, but the rally that Trump had at Mount Rushmore last night, where like almost everybody, in fact, I didn't see anybody with a mask on in the entire thing, and everyone was sitting really close and everything. And I want to talk about this because, I mean, like, the president and his people are openly defiant of their own guidelines. And it begs the question, what exactly is the message that they're intending to get out there? Because there's already too much confusion about whether masks are necessary or desirable or an infringement upon your basic social liberty. There's so much confusion. I don't understand the confusion, frankly, because to me it's kind of open and shut. Right. But when the president does that, and they encourage people not to wear masks in a damn rally, what the fuck is going on with that?
When it comes to his rally at Mount Rushmore, I don't give a fuck about COVID. The entire thing should never have happened.
Well, yeah.
The entire thing was infuriating. Everything about it was infuriating. And it's just like, they were talking about on the news last night. I had no idea about this, but in 1980, I knew about the Supreme Court ruling in 1980, but in 1980, they put like $100 million or something into a trust fund for the natives. So to make up for the damage that we did, to their sacred land. And out of principle, because they need the money, out of principle, they haven't touched it. And it's worth about $1 billion now that the tribe is sitting on, that they desperately need but will not touch, because they're like, we're not accepting this money. This is blood money, basically. We're not accepting it. But I mean, the entire fucking thing. I mean, and then the motherfucker gets on TV. He gets up on the stage and he does his speech, and all it's hatred and division and just vomiting his putrid bullshit all over the place. Just.
Oh yeah.
It's one of the worst speeches I've ever seen him give, right? I mean, I'm sorry, Joe, just to be really brief. I mean, it's not just about the divisiveness. I mean, all this stuff about how he's going to sign an executive order to make 10-year sentence for defacing a public monument or whatever.
That's already he's not doing shit. No, he's not doing. See, that's him. That's him doing this. That's all that is. Right. There's already a law in place with a 10-year sentence for defacing certain monuments. It's had to have been like a war hero kind of a thing. It's a veteran soldiers protection act or something like that. It's not all monuments. It's not all statues. It's only ones that are recognized military heroes.
All statues matter.
But I mean, how is it not a violation of free speech, though, to say you can't have this statue taken down? I mean, I suppose.
You can legally, you have to go through a legal process, basically.
Okay. So there's no throw a cable around it and hook it to the back of your car and yank. Okay.
Or spray painting it too. If you're defacing it in any way, chopping the arms off or spray painting it bright.
Yeah. 10 years seems a little harsh.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, here's the thing though, it gets me. Well, yeah, because that's more than a lot of people get for rape, which is pretty fucked up in and of itself. But the other thing about it that gets me, and it shows you that it's just red meat for his base, is he can't make laws. I mean, you can do executive orders, but all you can do has to do with is within the framework of the laws that already exist. So he's acting like I made a law that no, you can't, motherfucker. You don't have that authority. You're not a king. but his base are too dumb.
Sorry, I just had to bring this in real quick. You have been invited, Brock. You have got a link. You are more than welcome to join the screen. Nowadays, you can have 10 people on the screen at a time. And you're more than welcome to join. Please do.
It's very tangled, and I'm trying to actually.
Well, also, I want to address Brock because Brock, no, they weren't celebrating America, because when you say that certain Americans basically don't count, and when there were people there telling Native Americans to go home when they got here before we did, that's celebrating America.
It wasn't even on American land. I mean, like, who goes onto the sovereign soil of someone else to celebrate their country?
And
that's what they did. It wasn't even like celebrating America. Bullshit. You don't celebrate America by going onto someone else's soil and then bashing 60% of the population of your country. Bullshit. Bullshit.
But also, I mean, who's crapping on Americans celebrating the 4th of July? Maybe some specific Americans who are being pricks, but, you know, if people want to go watch fireworks and catch the disease while they do it, who am I to stop them? You know? In fact, if more people will commit suicide by virus, it'll help my transition into power, you see, because there will be less opposition. That's what I'm thinking is... But then, of course, there's that long incubation period where people don't know they're actually diseased, and so they'll kill a lot of people they don't realize they're going to kill, and it's not okay. But if that weren't a factor, I'd say go out there and breathe deep, fella.
Well, also, the other thing I was talking about this a lot today and yesterday. I keep hearing, you know, right-wingers, you know, exclusively say stuff like, well, what are we going to stop paying for the crimes, you know, that happened against the Native Americans? I'm like, you can't get penance for a crime that's still ongoing. That's the thing. That's the thing. It's not like this happened a long time ago. It started a long time ago and hasn't stopped. If you make a treaty with someone and says, hey, this is your land, and then you take it away by force, you're sitting on stolen land. You've abrogated a treaty, and you not through agreement. You've abrogated a treaty. That's a crime, and it actually violates the Constitution because treaties, according to the Constitution, treaties are part of the law. They're the supreme law of the country. So we're in violation. So we're in violation of our own Constitution, and we on land that has been stolen, that was given away, that was agreed to, not even given away. It was their land. We agreed to not take it from them, and then we did it anyway. So the crime is ongoing. You can't get penance. You can't get forgiveness for something you're still doing.
I think it's amazing that anyone can look at the left and say, oh, they're anti-American because they're doing the best they can to uphold the Constitution and to live by treaties that are signed by the federal government. Let me see. When you're defending the actual laws of the country, that makes you anti-American? Oh,
and when the right defends traitor Confederates who were not Americans, at least at that time when they were Confederates, they were not Americans. They were fighting to not be Americans. So when you defend Confederates, you're not defending Americans, you're defending traitors.
So I watched the entire speech, and I believe I made it farther into it than Rob did because I'm a connoisseur of trolling, right? And I consider Trump to be a troll. And in this case, I think that my gag reflex was a little bit stronger than Rob's because we're talking about Trump, right? So the best moment of the entire speech was when he announced that he's going to make an entire state park full of statues. And I was like, in this climate where you're seeing statue after statue being toppled, you're going to announce that you're going to make a whole state park full of statues.
Michael, did you see today? Hang on, Kate. Did you see today the list in his speech today? He gave a list of some of the people that they intend to have on these statues in this park of the sacred Americans or whatever the fuck. And he's going to have like General Patton and General MacArthur on there and a bunch of other people, a long list of people. Some of them.
Oh, geez.
Not. I think there's going to be controversy behind most of the names on the list. But I mean, when I was watching it, and he said MacArthur and Patton, I was like, motherfucker, what? Because okay, yeah, they World War II, blah blah blah. But it's after that. After that, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to answer for there. I had to sack MacArthur because it was worried he might order bombs to be dropped illegally. I mean, that's kind of a big deal. Why do we need a statue to MacArthur? You know what I mean? Put a statue up now if you want to.
But I think it'd be pretty awesome to have a statue of Patton Oswalt up there. So go away. But I mean, one of the things that was pointed out on one of the internet shows I watch is that a lot of the things that the Republicans and actually the Democrats and especially Trump are trying right now are the kinds of things that would have worked 2 or 3 elections ago, and now not so much. Like, it seems like it's harder to win over the electorate with platitudes anymore, with empty gestures anymore. And they're trying it and trying it and trying it and trying it as hard as they can.
I want to respond to Brock real quick because he said that politics is a numbers game. And I promise you that crapping on America on the 4th is a garbage steady in a 2-party system. And that's just a fact. No, politics isn't a numbers game. It's not a numbers game. It's a messaging game. And the problem is with what you're saying, you've already bought into the messaging. You already bought the whole package. And now you're trying to sell it to us. See, the only person who crapped on America on the 4th was Donald fucking Trump. He's the only one. He took a great big steaming shit on everything that this country stands for on the 4th of July. Big pile. But see, the messaging is anybody who has a problem with that is shitting on America. That's the messaging. And that's the messaging that you're selling. It's not numbers, my friend.
And that's like anyone who says, the whole love it or leave it attitude. It's like, well, no, it's love it. Because I love it, I want to make it better. That's, the more perfect union idea. So no, when you tell somebody that, they have to basically kowtow to your way or leave, that's anti-American. And
it's proto-fascism is what that is.
Oh, and Trump is going full on fascist now. I mean, there's a lot of things that he's doing that are like, everyone's making comparisons now to Hitler's rise, which I realize is kind of death to any argument on the internet, but people are still making that comparison, and I see where they're coming from, and they kind of have a legit point. So,
Well, also, too, I'm wondering, he's talking about making a state park. The federal government has no authority to make a state park. A state would have to do that. We can make a federal park on federal land, but if he's saying he's going to make a state park, he's got no authority. And again,
that might just be sloppy language, though.
Yeah, words. It's just words. He doesn't care. I mean, he'll spill out what is sloppy language.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying, though. If he actually tried to make a state park, that would be in violation of the sovereignty of whatever state he was trying to do it in, which, of course, I have no doubt that he would try because, that's the way he is.
And, okay, maybe we're not thinking politically. Maybe we are emoting. But guess what? You do have to sell your message. You do have to get people to listen to it and like it and be passionate about it. You have to make them want to vote for you and what you stand for. So you kind of have to emote a little bit, Brock, when we're talking about this stuff.
And I have to jump in there because I have to back that up, because I mean, the idea that Trump is not doing anything other than emoting with all of his bullshit in his speech yesterday is ridiculous. That's the whole speech, was emoting. You know what I mean? He's trying to emote to a different crowd, sure, using different arguments, sure, but he's not trying to sell us policies of any kind whatsoever. He's,
I heard somewhere that he actually said, I think it was to Pence, look, you do the governing, I'll do the rallies. It was something like that, where he just said all he wants are the public appearances where people are throwing adulation at him, and he doesn't really want to be president.
And the truth is, if anybody's emoting, it's the right. And it's always been the case. Always. And then they say libtards and snowflakes. But, God forbid a black man has a gun. God forbid. Or God forbid gay people want to adopt a kid.
Or somebody says happy holidays.
Oh God, yes.
Anyone who gets offended by happy holidays has no right to say that anyone else is being emotional.
Yeah, I mean, if I say say I'm working a retail job and I say Merry Christmas to a Jewish person, they might get a bit grumpy about it, or they might just seethe inwardly, or they might not care. But either way, I wasn't inclusive of their holiday, now was I? Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, freaking Boxing Day, or whatever the hell there is, New Year's. There's so many December holidays, especially my damn birthday. And so if I say happy holidays, I'm just trying to be nice to people. You know, it's not an anti-Christmas thing to say Happy Holidays.
Here's the thing too. When I was a kid, Rob's around my age. When we were kids, here at least here in New Jersey, people used to say, Christians used to say it all the time. Why? Because some of us were Catholics, some of us were Methodists, and various forms, and a lot of Jews and some Muslims, and also it really was shorthand at the time. It was Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, because that was too much of a pain in the ass. We just said Happy Holidays, and no one got offended. Nobody.
Yeah, no, the War of Christmas is again, it's a conservative mental meltdown they created in the dark recesses of their empty brains. I mean, conservative America is the most emotionally easily disturbed demographic in this country.
That's why they have so many guns, because
that goes against anything that goes against their very narrow view of what is American and their predominantly Christian viewpoint is immediately evil. I mean, you have conservatives on television every single day in this country talking about gay people are possessed with demons and they're going to rape children. I mean, that only comes from the mind of somebody seriously ill.
I absolutely can't defend. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that was it.
I was going to say, I absolutely can't defend the right-wing conservative Christian types that you're sort of referring to, Rob, except for I have to call bullshit insofar as Trump crosses every line that you just said they won't tolerate, and they tolerate it from Trump. Trump
on their side.
Cheated on his wife while she just had a baby, and he cheated on his wife right after he was born.
Because he's a mouthpiece for them. And he can.
Yes.
This is what I'm saying. They don't have any real beliefs. They don't have real beliefs at all.
There you go. I mean, you're talking about people that have no principles. I mean, they're completely immoral. They have no moral center, no principles, no values that they stick to. As long as they can get their agenda pushed through, they will put up with anything. It doesn't matter.
One thing that I will advocate to the ends of the earth is that everyone go watch the Alt-Right Playbook on YouTube. It's an amazing series. It's really long, and it's kind of like an emotional gut punch if you binge it. But they talk about the right-wing mindset and how it completely resembles fascism, because it's got the people at the top, the people at the bottom, and of course it's a pyramid, so there's only a few people at the top. And most people want to be here and not here, but they also think that the people who are up here, the sharks rather than the minnows, they're there because they are supposed to be, that they are there because they're destined to be, because they are sharks, because they are that good. They have the natural God-given ability to be the dominant people at the top. The problem is, though, when you start getting into things like fascism, one thing that fascism always needs is an enemy. There always needs to be an other. And the problem is that other is never completely defined. Like, once you get rid of one other or fight one other, or if that other becomes normalized and you have to move on to another one, they will always move on to another one. And over time, that pyramid gets smaller and smaller and narrower until it's a circular firing squad up at the top. That's the problem, is that this ideology is all about power and staying in power and not having your power usurped and not slipping down that pyramid. That's what it's about. So when you look at people worshiping Donald Trump when they're on the right, part of that is just because they see a powerful man. They see a man with a lot of influence. They see a man who made a lot of money and this, that, and the other thing.
So Brock just said that this entire podcast is an example of Trump owning free land in all of our heads. No, it isn't free. It isn't free. We're paying for it. We're paying for it every motherfucking day. There's nothing free about it. There's nothing free.
Well, here's the other thing. Think about what Brock's saying. So let's say, let's pretend for a second he's correct. Well, but that's him. That's what's a good thing. Just that he makes liberals upset, which is a pretty weak ideology. I was watching. I reposted an interview that was on CNN from a few weeks back. It was an evangelical minister, and he was really upset about the way things are going. And he's basically trying to sound the alarm bells. Basically trying to tell his fellow Christian, his fellow evangelical, that you have sold out your Jesus for power. And if you don't stop this, the people are leaving evangelism in droves, especially young people, and that if you don't stop this and turn around and return to a moral center, that you will destroy the whole evangelical movement, because basically you'll have no credibility left anymore. And he's totally right. You have no moral center. When your goal is, he owns the libs, that's not a moral center at all. That's not even principle. And that's his thing, and that's where he came down. He's like, they have no principles anymore. They gave that up a long time ago. That's why they can be hypocritical. If you can, because that's the thing. You can say things that sound noble, but then as soon as they're inconvenient, you can just ignore them. Just like when people are running for office, and if you say anything, even Al Gore said something nice to Dick Cheney about his daughter, saying, "Hey, I respect that you even though you're come from the conservative side, that you still love your daughter and you're respectful for your lesbian daughter," and that was outrage. But then and then it wasn't even a negative thing. But then, the right wing, Rush Limbaugh and even members of Congress going after Chelsea Clinton, going after the Obama daughters with reckless abandon. They don't give a shit. They have no morals whatsoever.
Well, the problem is they do have morals. They're just very, very, very flexible and situational. It's like, this is okay unless that. And so it's like they have a set of rules that
moral relativism, which they say they're against.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know.
More appreciating Trump as a troll. I thought it was weird when I heard that names like Harriet Tubman come out of his mouth, Frederick Douglass, Martin Luther King Jr., because I was like, why is he making statues of black people? This is not right. Like, if those families were asked if they felt like that was appropriate, they'd probably say no. But the best troll out of his entire list of people he wants a statue made out of, Billy Graham.
I saw that.
Billy Graham, who said that gay people are a sinister form of perversion and AIDS was a plague to be a judgment from God upon them. Billy Graham.
He also wanted Antonin Scalia. I was like, what the hell?
Dude's still alive.
I know he wants that.
They're buzz names. They're buzz names.
That's right. It's all marketing. That's really what it is. It's a market. It's a big old marketing thing.
You're not wrong. He also said Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan led one of the most corrupt administrations in American history. More than 100 people in Reagan's White House went to court and did time.
Yeah, but Reagan didn't remember. But Reagan didn't remember any of it by the end.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I know I'm like really old and shit, right? But I remember when all that stuff was brand new happening, the Iran-Contra affair at the end of the Reagan era. And the bottom line is, and I'm just going to summarize because it's way more complicated than I'm about to make it. But either Reagan knew about what they were up to and didn't do anything to stop them, in which case he should have been impeached or resigned, or like he said, he didn't know what they were up to, in which case they're running illegal operations out of the White House.
Wonder his nose.
He should resign or be impeached. So either way, he should have resigned or been impeached.
Well, here's the other thing.
It was way worse than Watergate, and for my money, way worse than what happened to Clinton 10 years later as well. You know what I mean?
Not again.
Because Oliver North and Poindexter jumped on their swords. That's it.
I'm looking at what Brock said here. Joe Biden is literally the manifestation of leftists chucking every principle out the window. I agree. But the thing is that Joe Biden looks like a 1980s Republican. Just saying.
Yeah, well, the thing is, to go what you're saying, Paul, one thing I remember, and I somebody found the video for me a while back, and I really need to keep a link to it. When the Iran-Contra first broke, Reagan actually came out and came clean and said it was an arms for hostage deal, and he said, I made a mistake. I, not we, not they, I made a mistake. Then later on, I don't recall, I didn't know anything about it. Yeah, that does not compute well.
I don't remember who it was. There was a comedian back in the day that said they should have tricked Reagan into admitting that he knew everything, and that admitting that the forgetting everything was a lie, by asking him a ridiculous question like, what about strawberries? And he could be like, well, what, strawberries? Nobody told me about the strawberries.
I don't know, that sounded more like a football coach than Reagan, but okay.
Well, I mean, but Ronald Reagan, of all, and if you're going to have a statue of presidents, I mean, quite frankly, he was the first black president, and there needs to be a statue of Barack Obama, just on that basis alone. Literally on that basis alone.
See,
Right?
again, I said
Well,
before.
wait a minute. I'm
No,
not sure
seriously,
I agree.
being the first of something. I mean, if it was the first, it would be the woman president. You know what I mean?
Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, like, I get it, and I kind of mostly agree. But part of me, like, deep down thinks that the purpose of any equality movement whatsoever should be to make our differences unremarkable. So, like, you know, it should not be the first black president. Oh my, amazing! It should just be
With respect,
great,
with respect, I completely disagree.
Can I finish?
I'm sorry.
Can I finish? Like I agree. It's great that the country finally got over that bullshit. You know, it's great that the country finally said, hey, we're ready for this. But at the same time, like, if I look back on this in like from the history class, if I'm 200 years from now and humanity has still survived, and I'm like, I hope that my thought is, why is it such a big deal that there was a black president? We have those all the time. It's great. You know, I mean, that
Yeah, but
is...
we're not there yet.
Because if you're constantly saying, oh, the first this minority, the first that minority, you're still drawing out.
I think
you're still saying like here's the minorities and here's the majority, and look
it's
how
because he's the first. It's not to do. It's not the first. It's not to do with the minority status as such. It's like the first man on the moon should have a statue, not because he's a man, but because he was the first.
But here's the thing.
The remarkable part was the moon.
Yeah. Here's the thing: is getting to the moon, being the first person on the moon, is a massive accomplishment. Being a person of a particular color who gets elected into an office should not be seen as an accomplishment. Although the reality is in our society, it is.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be, because I understand what Kate is saying, and to an extent I agree, because like I love Pride. I love going every year. I love it. I love it. I love it. I wish we didn't have to have any more.
Exactly.
I wish it was over. I wish it was done, but that's not, unfortunately, the society we live in.
Yeah.
I don't want to read articles about, you know, a gay man was shot by so-and-so, or so-and-so was shot by a gay man. Shouldn't even be a part of the description. It shouldn't matter. But unfortunately, it does.
It does. Well, it's like I did a video on Black History Month. I'd be happy to not need a Black History Month. I really would. Because that would mean that the history of Americans that included Black people actually includes covering people that were Black, other than saying, you know, that they were workers, which is what the fucking book from Texas says. So you know, but I would love that, but we're not in that world yet. So
well,
you know,
I have the perfect solution. I really do. Everyone should fuck everyone until we're all the same color.
All right, I'm
I like that idea.
Although, see, the thing is, I'm made up of almost every race. I need Asian to complete the set, like racially. So you'll all end up looking like me. So maybe it's not the perfect solution, but.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, basically, the only thing I'm not is like East Asian and like Spanish or Italian, and I got pretty much everything else covered.
I'm very white.
You are.
Well, that makes you the devil, or according to some people, anyway.
I am very white. I mean,
no, he's the devil for completely different reasons.
Wow.
No, I'm very British, very, very British, very English. So I was surprised, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame that accents aren't hereditary. Imagine that world.
Well, I was very keen to find out that I have Geordie cousins, but I'm very sad to find out that I'm not a Geordie myself. So that was just.
Of course, you know what would be even worse is if tattoos could be genetically inheritable. You know, like what if it turns out you're adopted and then you hit puberty and that birthmark morphs into a swastika and you're like, shit, what was my dad doing?
I'm glad we don't have that.
I don't know. This is me. The various sci-fi ideas I've had, like that might make an interesting episode of the Twilight Zone or Black Mirror or something, where you inherit.
It sounds like a good idea for a story.
Yeah.
I just love it when bigots take DNA tests and find out that they're at least partly of the group that they hate. I love that. You know, someone finds out that they're part black or part, you know, Ashkenazi Jewish or something like that. And it's like, yeah.
Oh, it's funny you mention. I did one of those 23andMe tests, and about 33%, the vast majority or the biggest percentage was Ashkenazi Jewish. So, yeah, that actually surprised me. I mean, I'm adopted, and the adoption agency gives you what they call non-identifying information, and the racial makeup they gave for me was so wrong.
Oh.
Well, you guys know the true Puka, I'm assuming. I know most of you do anyway. Well, he was able to, you know, I pushed him for years because, you know, he's adopted, and I kept telling him, dude, do the DNA. So he finally did, and I helped him. We actually tracked down his birth parents. They're both still alive, and come to find out that like his father's side of the family is like, you know, they like Nazi friendly. They're huge Trumpers and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, oh crap, you know. He was raised Jewish, so it's kind of like he thinks it's hilarious because you know because he's has you know didn't tell them, oh, by the way, your son was raised a Jew. You gave me up and I got raised a Jew.
I'm sorry. I was looking at Angel Writer's stuff on the back of the wall. That sort of orange one with the white rectangle in the middle. What is that?
Which one?
It's sort of orange with a black border and a white. Is that something at the window is tapping?
No. It's
okay.
I'm not the only one that checks out everybody else's place.
I do. I look at each of the dolls and see. I'm wondering what kind of books he's got back there.
What, me or Mike?
You. Aged out. Mike.
Oh, Mike. Yeah.
Those are paintings.
Oh, those are painted. Wow.
Those are canvases. Those are books. That's smart.
They do look like books.
Yeah,
they do. They do, or like DVDs or something.
Paintings of books.
Canvases.
I'm looking forward to filling my garage up full of canvases as well over the next couple of years. You know, I'm looking forward to painting a lot more now that I'm here. So more time on my hands. You know, it'd be cool.
Oh, I must have been thinking of excuse me. Wow, I must have been thinking of something else because the cover for Something at the Window is Scratching looks nothing like what I'm seeing on your wall. Okay.
Hang on a minute. I want to bring Tommy in real quick here because Tommy says, lucky we're done with politics. He's about to come on and kick some ass. Yeah, Tommy, talk is cheap, buddy. Talk is cheap. All right. Get your ass on here. You've got a link already. We can have 10 people on the screen at a time. So come on up. You know, I know Tommy has got some strong opinions about Joe Biden that we might like to mix it up a little bit about.
Just about to ask if Brock had run away like a bitty little bitch, but then he comments, all right.
Yes, Brock, I am now living in Colorado.
Yeah.
So, and I just moved here on Tuesday, just gone. So I've been here for like 5 days.
Paul, you sent the link to Robert, and I don't blame him for not showing up because it is the 4th of July and he's celebrating it with his family. But that he didn't show up after I called him out for being trolled by Sacha Baron Cohen at the political rally that he went to, that he was, you know, there and he was like, Sacha Baron Cohen was up on stage singing a sing-along, and it was very wrong. And all of the people were singing along with him. And he was just getting them further and further, finally to like the point of saying we should nuke the Chinese.
Oh, jeez.
He got them all singing along.
Who was getting trolled?
Robert. He went to
Too many Roberts. Which one?
March for Our Rights, Robert Wallace.
Oh, okay.
And he went to the March for Our Rights, and Sacha Baron Cohen was up on the stage trolling people.
That's hysterical.
And he's probably going to be on camera as part of the crowd for the next season of that This Is America show.
That is such a fun show, too. If you haven't watched it, you totally should.
But yeah, there's people had cell phone footage of Sacha Baron Cohen saying, damn liberals, we should inject them with the Wuhan flu. And as people were singing along with him.
I don't even know what to say to that. Well, I mean, I did invite Robert Wallace. I sent him the link, and I also sent him just the time so he would know what time to start. I didn't send any sort of explanation or anything like that. I just want to bring Curious on here for a quick one because he says, and I quote, Wallace lost his mind. I don't really think it's fair for me to comment because if I was going to say anything about that, he should be here to rebut. So honestly, Robert's videos have changed a lot, but it's my opinion that Robert's the same person he's always been. So I think we're just seeing a side of Robert that perhaps he wasn't so comfortable letting out before, but now he's lost all of his give a fucks. That's my
man.
I don't really know.
He's saying a lot of things that are in opposition to stuff he used to say. So I have a hard time. And look, people change, and I don't know why. I'm not going to say he's nuts or I'm not going to attack his mental state. But whatever reason why he's different now. And then answer Curious's question about the true Puka. No, it actually turns out Puka is not he's not Jewish. He's not ethnically or Jewish at all. I'm actually more Jewish than he is.
One thing that's great about those tests, apparently with a lot of people, but not everybody, including not me, will get their tests back. And there'll be like country, Genghis Khan, country. Genghis Khan fucked his way through the whole world. And now like a huge swath of the entire planet has Genghis Khan DNA. So,
yeah, Genghis Khan supposedly has more offspring than any other human being since Adam. He supposedly has more than 800 children. I read because every single village they went along, they raped people in the villages. So everywhere they conquered, there's little Genghis babies, more than one per village.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. The first time I heard that, it just amused the hell out of me. Just a big block of Genghis Khan.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't gotten anything that identifies me for that. Although I guess the one thing did say that my recent update on Ancestry said that I'm actually descended from some of the earlier slaves that were brought over. So my ancestry goes way back. So that's why when people say go home, like shit, motherfuckers, my people have been here way longer than yours. They didn't come here on purpose of their own free will, but they came.
Well, I'm of the mind that I think you're kind of nuts for doing 23andMe or Ancestry.com because once you've lost control of your genetic data, that's kind of it.
But what are they going to do with it?
Really?
Yeah.
The fact that I can't even answer that question because of all the different ways they might use it is scary enough to me.
I'm like, name something that's nefarious that they're probably going to do with it.
Okay, yeah. Right now there's data mining companies like Cambridge Analytica is no more, but there are data mining companies like Cambridge Analytica that have over 6,000 data points on every single American, and that doesn't include their genetic history. When you do these 23andMe things, you've just given them literally an entire encyclopedia of information about you that they can tag on to all this other information about you. You're talking about health insurance, rights and privileges that you might get in society. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. The Black Mirror isn't necessarily as far off as we might like to think it is when we're watching and think, oh, good thing that's never going to happen. I mean, no, you never know what kind of, if we allow fascism to take root, what they can do with the technological advances against us. I mean, just look at what's happening in China right now. In China, they monitor everybody's movements via the cameras and via face recognition. And if you do good things, you'll get merits. If you don't do good things, you'll get demerits. That's right now in China, okay?
Yeah, but I still want to know what they'll do with genetic info. Like, give me an example. Give me a for instance.
Well, I mean, they could. You might not care about these particular things, but I mean, it could affect what treatments you may or may not be able to get via insurance because you might have a genetic predisposition for this cancer or that cancer or whatever. So it might project what insurance you can get or what treatment you can get because your survivability might not be very good compared to, all these numbers. There's hiring and firing from jobs.
Okay. Well, hold on. I just want to address that first point you just made there. That's why we need Medicare for all. That's an argument for Medicare for all, is so that they can't use that kind of information against you.
Yeah. And just to address Brock real quick, Kate and I have had a number of knockdown, drag out fights, but say that she's such a statist that she trusts the government implicitly is a lie, Brock. It's a lie. So I'm going to defend Kate in this instance and say that is a lie. That is a smear. That is a slander. So stop that.
Exactly. I don't trust the government. I think the government's pretty freaking nefarious. All I was asking was specifically about what they might do with genetic info. That's all I was
I'm not
asking.
even talking. Yeah, and I'm not even talking about the government.
If they wanted genetic info like that, I mean, there's blood samples of me all the hell over the medical community because I had to have the brain surgery to get rid of the seizures. They draw blood from me constantly. If they want my DNA, someone can find it. You know?
Sure, yeah, but at least they have to go out and look for it. With Ancestry.com and 23andMe, you're giving it to them. And you're signing away your rights to control your own data. We should own all our own data. This is something that's way overdue in the age of the internet. We don't own our own data. You can find out what information is held about you, but you cannot find out what they do with that information. You can't find out.
I wanted to ask Brock, because he had said that's interesting to see a bunch of progressives not allowing people to progress. People to intellectually.
Put that in quotes.
I have no idea. Yeah, I'm just in quotes. What the fuck are you
He's talking about Robert Wallace because of the fact that but in our view, Robert did not progress. He regressed. So, you know, and we're not stopping him. We just think that his ideas now are not conducive.
Oh, but don't you realize that if you ever say anything critical of the right wing, all of a sudden you are like oppressing them every time. Any criticism whatsoever of the right wing. Oh, why are you trying to take away my rights? Why are you?
What I said before, they're snowflakes. They are the snowflakes.
What's he saying now? What would an evil government do with it? He's like, well, Brock, you're okay with the evil government we currently have. You don't have a problem with that, it seems. I mean, you say you do on paper, but reality, you're you know, you can say you don't, but you're perfectly fine with Trump.
Yeah, it's funny because conservatives in general, I mean, not all obviously, but conservatives in general like small government. They like a government small enough to be in a woman's vagina.
Right.
Yes, I like that.
They like the government small enough to tell you who you can marry.
Oh yeah. Well, here's the thing that gets me about so-called conservative, you know, self-titled conservatives. Prior to World War II, prior to the Cold War, they were all about keeping the military small because that's the whole thing. The idea you don't have to worry about government oppression if the government doesn't have a huge military, doesn't have a huge police force. So because these are the arms, this is the violence arms of the state. So you take that away. We always had a small military, and we have to use a draft or volunteerism to get people in when we went to war. So it prevented adventurism because we didn't have the forces to do it. But since the Cold War, we've had massive forces, which the conservatives have been totally fine with.
Well, and also things like war, soldiers became a profit industry.
Ask a conservative says he's not a conservative.
Ask a conservative. Ask a conservative says I'm not a conservative. Well,
that has got to explain that right there.
Ironic. Talk about really bad branding.
Yeah. I mean, talk about double talk, and you know, and what kind of integrity does one have to do to have the name of their channel be Ask a Conservative, and then when challenged on conservatives, oh, I'm not a conservative. Well, you know what? I mean, then then you're a liar in your name.
Yeah,
maybe.
Brock, you gotta put your jogging shoes away, Brock. Go take a shower and get your ass on the camera and come and
not jogging.
He's not jogging. He's not jogging. He's got caps. He's got punctuation. He's using quotes. He's not jogging. He's not jogging.
He's mentally jogging. He's mentally jogging.
Mentally jogging.
Well,
mental acrobatics is more like it. I mean, seriously. I mean, watching that comment. I mean, that's like the last and most important order was to not believe your eyes. Is that the quote?
Yeah,
right?
From 1984. Yeah.
Well, see, Tommy's saying that the government take your DNA and clone you. Like, well, once we get to the point where someone can create a stable human clone, yes, that would be possible. However, the fact that it would take a lifetime to get them to be old enough to commit murders, I'm 51. If they're going to come after, you know, good luck with that. I'm not really worried.
Well, I know this is like going off on a tangent, but since I sense a lull here in the conversation, I want to take it a completely different, non-political way, or at least not partisan political in a sense, because you're just talking about cloning, Joe, and this is actually a subject that's fascinated me for a long time about the ethics of cloning, to clone or not to clone, right? And like, because I think right now we already have the technology. I mean, you can clone my liver and give me a new liver. I don't think there's anything ethically wrong with that. But when it comes to cloning whole human beings, or even animals, I have a lot of problems with it. Because like, if you clone yourself, does that clone belong to you or does it belong to itself?
Belongs to itself.
Right? In which case, what's the point of cloning it?
Well, okay, I can think of ways that cloning can be used medically, where like I've talked to a lot of vegans who have said, yes, I would eat meat that was grown in a vat if it never had a brain and never felt anything. So if we can clone organs for replacements, that'd be awesome. But if we are talking about a clone that's self-aware, well, I don't know, vanity maybe would be a reason to clone yourself. Maybe you want a child but don't have anyone who's willing to donate anything with you. I mean, obviously,
so you Boba Fett yourself.
You should probably adopt instead, because there's so many unwanted kids. But again, we go back to the vanity argument. I mean, maybe it's just because I've consumed far more than my fair share of science fiction. But believe me, the clone or not clone argument has come up a lot.
I can guarantee that I can almost guarantee that China has already cloned a human. I'm sure they already have. I would be shocked if they didn't.
Rob, that's racist. They do look different from each other.
Well, see, the thing that gets me about cloning, I mean, I think, if we get to the point where we can clone an organ or whatever, I think that's good, obviously, for purposes of, or even a limb. Just say, you lose a limb, and if you could selectively grow the arm and attach the rebuilt arm onto your old, your stump. But yeah, there are, to me, the ethical things are. I've heard people say stuff like they wanted to be able to do a clone so that, like, they had a child that was sickly and they could grow a clone and then get organs from the clone. Like, no, that's a person now. You've made a person. It's the only difference you had twins. It's a delay. It's basically a delayed twin, and so that's a separate person. You can't just give birth to a person so you can harvest them. That they have.
Okay, so go ahead, Kate.
We could totally get into like now we've talked about cloning, we can get into abortion now, like was it a person, was it not a person kind of thing.
Before we go there, I want to go a little bit further with the cloning thing, because in the UK they're genetically modifying pigs, right, to be able to grow a heart and other organs that can be transplanted into humans, right? Very similar ethical problems with that, because obviously you're creating an animal for the purpose of destroying the animal, for the purpose of sustaining a human life, which sounds no different than eating it, right? But like, is it ethical to do that, to take an organ out of an animal to make that? I don't know. I find myself.
Well, we flesh. I mean.
Yeah, it's ethical to eat the animal. It's ethical to harvest the organs for implantation. From my perspective,
I recently read somewhere that they had in the lab had a chimp fetus with a human brain, and they ran their experiments on this fetus, and then they killed it. They aborted the, and I had like really mixed feelings. I was just like, wow, scientifically that's just amazing, but ethically, if I had a human brain, how do you even begin to defend that? I mean,
well, okay. Again, kind of dragging us towards the abortion thing. I think of it as a matter of self-awareness. To be a person, you need a personality. Like, genetics isn't enough. If someone is brain dead, they're not thinking, they're not feeling, they're not self-aware, they're not a person. They may be a human, but they're a slab of like meat without, So if this chimp that had a human brain was never fully self-aware, I don't really have a huge problem with it. Much the same way I don't have a problem with an early term abortion. But then if you start having like something that can realize that it is a person, it is a self, I think, therefore I am, that's where I start to have problems with it.
Right, and that's the thing about growing a clone, a whole human, and trying to harvest it. I'm like, well, that being has body sovereignty the same way I do. So,
for crying out loud.
Can't.
Sorry, I'm just looking at what Skippy McGee there typed, and I'm sorry, but
well, actually, when
does not say it's a person, you dumbass. Science says it's human. It's a human entity. But person is a mental thing, not a biological thing. It's mental.
Right. And once someone reaches brain death, we actually call them dead. And generally speaking, we take them off of life support. And in the case of Cherry Shivo, where right wingers jumped up and down and do all this stuff, like, oh, you saved Terry. And then after she was taken off, and they actually looked at her brain had atrophied to the point where literally all the frontal lobe stuff was completely gone. She was a medulla pumping blood and nothing more. So whatever made Terry Shivo Terry was gone, and keeping her alive was really just self-flagellation to feel better. But the person that was her was dead.
My cat is more of a person than Terry Shivo was. And if you're going to flip out and say, oh, but person and human are synonyms, okay, fine. But what happens if we meet intelligent, self-aware extraterrestrials someday? Are they not people because they're not human? Bullshit. Of course they are. If a robot or computer passes the Turing test, are they not a person because they're not human? Come on, person is... I feel like I'm almost having the sex versus gender debate now.
Yeah. Well, and also Brock's like, oh, so it said every evil despot. The thing is, evil despot said that about people that were thinking people. Even somebody who is like has severe, cognition problems, they're still a person. They're not dead. Their brain functions poorly. But
did you really expect anything other than that kind of a remark from Brock, though? I mean,
no, not really.
It's his bread and butter. It's what he peddles in.
Yeah.
It's also partly my bread and butter, though, because I consume so much damn sci-fi.
Especially considering, like, we've talked with Brock before, and I had a conversation with him. He's not for things that would save people's lives, because it would, the evil government would be doing it. So, and that's the case. I don't want everyone to hear the life argument out of any right winger, because if you're not for real, if you're basically, my attitude at this point now, if you're not for medical care for everybody, you can't say you're pro-life. You're full of shit.
Okay, what is it? GA5524. Maybe they're not coming to this planet. Then again, maybe they are. After all, I'm here.
So the argument about harvesting organs for out of a clone for your own use, I think is going to be moot. And I'm not a biologist, but I think that the science with CRISPR of being able to make a retrovirus to inject into us to make our telomeres grow longer so that we never grow old is probably closer than our ability to fuse nerves from a transplanted thing. So there might be this call for, like, if you I guess fell from a tall building and you needed a liver because yours went splat. Yeah, but
I gotta know what argument Brock is talking about. The left has lost this argument. What is it talking about?
Well, also, Rob,
it doesn't even matter. I mean, if you have to tell the other side they lost, chances are you're the one who lost.
Well, the funny thing is that I can attack the message and the messenger, Brock. They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Because if the messenger,
sorry, Michael, I'm really sorry. I just couldn't. I'm reading his comments.
I just don't think that the use for cloning people will be there by the time we're able to do it. Because we will have cured a lot of the reason why people would want to harvest a body, because one science is progressing faster than the other.
Well, see, the thing is, though, like, okay, so say somebody's a diabetic and their liver or the kidneys get destroyed. CRISPR is not going to do, I don't know what's CRISPR going to do about that.
So it could for one, it could go in and change the DNA of existing cells in place. And so if it was type 1 diabetes and their white blood cells were the ones that attacked the pancreas, they could change the white blood cells that are already in the person by infecting them and getting the DNA changed out so that they don't attack the pancreas. And then the pancreas. Right.
Although I do have to point out something. It's actually pronounced diabetes.
Wilfred Brimley. Well, I'm talking about just say somebody had, whether they're type 1 or type 2, and it's been a long time, and then now the damage to the heart, kidney, or other organ, our liver has happened already. What is Chris about that?
Well, after removing the thing that's attacking it, then you could use stem cells to possibly stimulate them and regrow.
Mm-hmm.
Also, not really using a clone. Stem cells, kind of a different thing.
Oh, and that's another voodoo thing that the right wing goes off about stem cells, because they think women are going to get pregnant and have abortions just to create stem cells, which is the most ridiculous idea. No woman's doing that to herself. She's not going to no woman's going to go through all that just to get pregnant, to abort, to make stem cells. If all we have to do is just free up all the material that already exists, and we'd have plenty. Yeah, I'm with you, Curious. Curious and I agreed on something. It's a momentous occasion. Stem cell cure for diabetes. That'd be great.
The idea that a woman would put herself...
Telomeres. I love that idea.
Yeah, GA544.
Anyone who's witnessed a pregnant woman.
I've got type 2 diabetes, and and unfortunately, having type 2 diabetes and depression is not a good combination, because you tend to get off script of the things you're supposed to do and not do.
Okay, why does Paul keep disappearing? That's number one.
I don't know. I think he's got other things going on.
Well, and his connection's been kind of spotty too.
It's been a lousy connection.
Asking Brock, apparently asking him what the fuck he's talking about, apparently is being rubbed the wrong way at opposition. I don't know if you're opposing anything I've said or anything I believe, because I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. All I need you to do is to stop spewing talking points or copying somebody else's words and speak for yourself. Maybe then.
Get out here. Get out. Come on out here. We've been telling you.
Opposing each other. Just saying.
Like I say, talk is cheap. Brock, get on. That's it.
We dare you.
Or curious. The thing is, fetuses have some of the best stem cells. So, and the thing is, we have the material already. I mean, it's not like, again, no one's going to be getting an abortion for the purposes of creating stem cells. That's just not going to happen.
But can't they get stem cells from the placenta though? Also,
some, but they're not all the same type. The ones that are the least differentiated are in fetuses. And that's the thing. You want the ones that are least differentiated, because then you can basically push them to be whatever you want. You have more options.
Right. That makes sense.
Sorry, I live in a condo complex that has a small courtyard in the middle of it. And there are a bunch of people who've been throwing these massive barbecues with no social distancing or masks constantly. And it's just, I don't know, it's starting to... I shouldn't let it piss me off or anything, but at the same time, it have you ever been sad because people are going to hurt themselves, but it's none of your business, so you can't really let it get to you, but at the same time, you have too much compassion and you want to say something, but you kind of can't? I don't know.
That's how I feel about the entire argument about wearing masks at the moment, where it seems to be. I mean, I've seemed to have jumped into the country at a time where, I mean, a few weeks ago, we mentioned masks on the show here, and everyone was saying that it was kind of a political partisan divide with wearing masks and not wearing masks. But it actually seems to be not necessarily political so much, because I've seen plenty of concern. I mean, Dick Cheney was wearing a mask, for Christ's sake.
Yep, I saw that.
Paul was wearing a mask, for Christ's sake. So
And he froze again.
Trumpist partisan. I think Trumpism And the people who want to identify themselves as absolute cult members are saying no masks for me. It's like their Great America, Make America Great Again hat, but for their face, and it's something they don't wear.
He publicly called it political correctness. Wearing a mask is being politically correct.
Yeah, I watched a good video that basically said that Trump, for all his showmanship, he missed an opportunity here. So what he could have done is he could have made Make America Great masks. And that could have been a thing. And you could put all sorts of things on there and own the libs and all sorts of slogans on it. He totally missed the trick there.
Yeah. I know those masks exist, but I don't think the campaign should. I mean, the campaign has never pushed them. Trump himself could wear a different mask every day and sell loads of them.
It's true.
Yeah, totally missed an opportunity.
And what cracks me up the most about Trump is he says he didn't want to wear a mask because he thinks it would make him look weak or it wouldn't project an image of strength. This is a guy who wears fucking diapers, who sprays his fucking face orange and wears a goddamn toupee.
Plus,
and I mean, like, one of the reasons he gave for not locking us down when COVID-19 was a new thing was because he thought that it would make him look weak to think that we might be vulnerable to it. That his whole thing, like, he didn't want to look strong by stepping up like a boss and getting things done, making sure we were protected. No. It would make him look bad to not, or to admit there was a problem.
Hang on.
I was going to say something about what Brock just said. It's called freedom. Here's the thing, Brock. You're supposedly a libertarian. Well, if you're a libertarian, then you believe that if you commit force against another person, that's a transgression, right? It violates the principle of non-aggression. Well, if you're infected or potentially infected and you infect somebody else, you have, in fact, used force against them. So that's why you wear the mask, is so that you don't commit an act of force against somebody, because you may not know that you're infected because it takes several days. The germination period is for several days, the incubation period, excuse me. So it's a precaution against using force unwittingly against another person. So this idea of this freedom is horseshit. This is why libertarianism is bullshit, because you don't actually believe any of that crap. It's all about you and yourself and your freedom. You don't care if you trample on other people's freedom at all.
If the mask protected you, if you wore a mask to protect yourself, I would be 100% on Brock's side. You can't tell me to wear a mask to protect myself.
Right.
I have every right to harm myself if I want to. If I want to endanger myself, because I smoke, I do things, I endanger my health every day, and it's, God damn it, that's my right.
Right.
The mask isn't about you. It's about everyone around you. I don't know where you've been. I don't know who you're hanging out with. I don't know where you stuck your breath and where you've been breathing. You have no right to infect me. And that's why you wear the mask. You have the right to swing your fist, but it stops at my nose. And when you're breathing and you're within close distances and you're not wearing a mask, you're hitting my nose. You're committing an act of violence against me without me even knowing it.
Paul,
no, shit freedom. No.
Paul, it's insensitive to the president to say that he could have just made masks just like he made hats to sell, because all of his Chinese production facilities have been affected by the pandemic.
Oh, speaking of which, gosh, you know how everyone and their hamster is bored now? Hell, I was so bored I actually tidied up, if you can believe it. But I decided a couple of days ago I wanted to try to get a new video game system. And of course, they're all gone. They're all bought up. And Nintendo was like, yeah, and our factories are all in China, so it'll be a while. Fortunately, I have a friend in the Navy who could get one for me from the commissary, but still, you know, everything in China is locked down factory-wise, apparently.
Well, that's right. I want to pick up a point you made earlier, Rob, about to Brock about the masks. All right, because I agree with what you just said, but we allow them to tell us to wear a seatbelt.
Mm-hmm.
That is basically for our own protection. You know, I can understand making your passengers in the car wear the seatbelt, but you as the driver, you shouldn't be forced to wear a seatbelt, but we allow them to force us to do that. We've accepted that infringement on our liberty. There's loads of examples, Brock.
There's a reason why.
But people
Loads of
lost
them.
their shit over seatbelts back in the 70s and 60s or whatever. They lost it the same way they did for masks.
Yeah, she's right. But there's a difference. If you want to drive a car, there are certain rules you have to follow. You do not have a right to drive a car.
Right, that's true.
Driving is a privilege. So because driving is a privilege, they can put on all kinds of requirements, and a seatbelt is one of them. My being alive, I have a right, because I am already alive, I have a right to continue living.
Right.
Like Brock, who doesn't want to wear a mask because of his freedom, my freedoms, he doesn't have the right to potentially spread a disease that could kill me.
Well, here's the irony of it. These right wingers are going nuts about masking and everything like that. A lot of these are the same people who feel that people who are HIV infected should have a brand on them, so people that interact with them know that they're HIV infected.
Yeah,
even though HIV cannot be spread through casual contact.
Yeah, the hypocrisy is like mind-numbing.
Well,
but again, that's Brock's people.
I mean, I was having an argument about exactly this with someone on Twitter today. And I asked him, like, what if instead of sneezing out a disease, you were shooting a gun into a crowd instead? Would that change your mind? He never answered, because when you actually put their back to the wall like that and ask pointed questions, they tend to run like scared little bitches. But I wonder what he would have said. If it was a gun instead of a disease, would you still be okay with, you don't get to tell me to not do it?
The other thing I wanted to say about masks, which I think is missing from the conversation so far, is there have been studies done that said if we had masked up right from the beginning, we would have saved 30 to 40,000 lives, right? If we had masked up when we first started lockdown.
Right.
Oh, not again.
Right. That's right. And we'd already be
wearing masks.
And we'd actually be able to safely open up right now. So we,
right.
Well,
that's what happened in South Korea. South Korea messed up and they never had a lockdown.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And when I talk to my students, they're like, what? Because I tell them about the issues here, and they're like, why? Why are they not doing this? We have to, because we're helping each other out.
We could have been almost done with this by now.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Oh, yeah.
But people like, Brock, who want to be contrarian just for the sake of being contrarian.
I mean, here's a question then. I want to know is how Brock will feel if somebody contracts COVID and then goes and coughs on him on purpose.
Well, we're at what, 100?
Was that violence against you, Brock? I bet you think it is.
Well, what do we have here now? 132,000 deaths apparently from COVID-19, right? And the Vietnam War, battle deaths, 47,434. Okay, we have more than twice the amount of deaths from Vietnam just from this disease. Now, imagine if we'd worn masks. How many of those people wouldn't be dead right now?
Right, and we're talking in 5 months, because I keep hearing right wingers still going off about, oh, it's like the flu. I'm like, well, we've already lost 2 to 3 times as many people than the flu normally kills in an annual year, and we've only been 5 months in, whereas we're talking the flu the whole year. So
Oh, this whole conversation is why the left is going to lose. Really, why? Why?
Press that. See that this whole conversation is why the left is going to lose. How does that mean? The left is going to lose? Why? Because the right doesn't care about facts. That's why. Because the right is living in a fantasy land. When he says that, the left is going to lose. This conversation is an example of it. Basically, what he's saying is, my side doesn't want to deal with reality. My side doesn't believe in things that are true. We don't believe in facts. We want to live in a la-la land where we can just deny reality. And that's why we win. That's what he's saying.
It sounds like what he's saying is, oh my gosh, you all disagree with me, therefore I win.
The problem with Brock is not a troll. The problem with Brock is not a troll. He's a good example of the stupidity on the other side.
Well, and then again, the whole thing about people Brock's supposedly pro-life. No, you're not. If you're okay with people walking around and breathing COVID on other people, and that because the state can't tell them they can't do that, you're not pro-life, buddy. Sorry, I'm not. I'm not.
See, and here he goes. Do you even hear yourself? Well, maybe if you had a point to make about what we just said, you should articulate it just a little better beyond, you just said. Well, what is wrong with what we just said? Like, what is it that we should hear that we're apparently not hearing? Spell it out for us.
Well, plus, if he wasn't a coward punk bitch, he would come in here to represent himself.
He doesn't even have.
Yeah, right.
The guy doesn't have any positions. He never did. He's never had. All he does is he borrows the words of other people and then vomits it out all over the place, like the child, like the child that he is. That's whatever, dude. Brock, seriously. Whatever. Oh wait, I wanted to. Curious talked about HIV. Actually, he talked about AIDS, and he said something about it being should it be a misdemeanor if somebody spreads AIDS? Number one, if you have HIV and you know it, and you knowingly have sex with someone else, and you do not tell them, even if you use protection, and you do not tell them that you have HIV, it's a crime, and not like a slap on the wrist. You go to prison. Even if they don't get it, even if you don't spread it, if you have sex with someone while HIV positive and don't tell them, your ass is going to jail.
Right.
So it is already a crime, Curious.
Right.
I'm pretty sure I recall way back in the day when AIDS was still more like brand new and in the news like every day. There was a case where someone in Texas had consensual sex with a guy. I think he was an Army guy, actually. He had consensual sex with a guy who afterwards said to him, "Oh, by the way, I'm HIV positive." And so the other guy who he just had sex with killed the guy. And when it came to court, the judge said it was justifiable homicide.
Right. And so that's the thing. And who pushed for that law? Conservative, right? I'll say right wingers. So right wingers were perfectly okay with that. And again, that's fine. That's so why should it be the same for COVID? If you go out there and you spread COVID,
it is not a misdemeanor. It is not a misdemeanor. You go to jail. You go to prison. It's considered
a felony.
Attempted murder is what. It's not a misdemeanor. You idiot. Name call. Sad, dude. Get an argument. Get a position. Hold some kind of.
Seriously, just come on, come on, Brock. You know you want to, really.
And it just
I think he's
sounds
having more fun trolling us offline, and if he came on, it would be a little more difficult.
And if the only thing you have to say is sad, you just sound like Trump.
He's
sad. Wrong. Like that one word answer he gives at the debate. I mean, what the fuck?
He's jogging.
Oh yeah. He's
right?
Brock, if you jump in the stream, I promise we'll all tie our hands behind our back, and Joe will tie his left hemisphere of his brain behind his back.
And I'd still kick his ass intellectually.
And also, I mean, I'm not keeping track of what we've said to Brock, but name calling is not what we've done yet, or at least we haven't done it with any kind of style or flair or like we meant it. Not yet. Believe me, if we're calling you names, you'll know.
Oh yeah.
if it's Bionic Dance or me, you should know. You've been around long enough. You should know by now. If we're gonna call you names, you're gonna fucking know it. There's no mistake about that.
Golly.
Okay, Curious, I don't doubt that you read it somewhere. I really don't. I don't.
About gift givers.
Yeah. Well, there's gift givers and gift seekers and there's bug chasers. There's a fetish. There's a and it's sick and it's twisted and it's something that exists, unfortunately. But from a legal perspective, if you do not disclose, and that's really how it hinges. If you do not disclose that you're HIV positive, then it's considered basically attempted murder. So if you do disclose that you're positive and the person agrees to have sex with you, they no longer have a case against you. So as far as like intentionally catching or intentionally spreading, those people are typically disclosing to each other because that's the entire point.
Right.
Although there was something I read, an article I read earlier today, or it might have been last night, doesn't matter, about people. There was this contest where what they did, a whole bunch of people got together in an enclosed space, put a bunch of money in a pool, and the first person to get COVID got the pool. Like the literally contest to catch the disease. How fucked up is that?
Yeah.
That's pretty fucked up.
Well, and the thing is, what gets me is that, because a lot of them are saying, oh, it's just like the cold, which of course some people get a mild case, but even some of the people with mild cases have found that there are after effects, that there are some debilitating long-term side effects of getting this sickness. And like I said, my mom just got cleared like a week ago. She's not 100%, and we won't even know for a bit, if whether there are any long-term effects. But the fact that people do this, I'm like, look, obviously scientists don't always get it right, but egad, I mean, this like, it's almost like, well, we don't need to listen to experts. Like, well, then who are you listening to? Listen to some, experts don't always get it right, but the people who are not experts almost always get it wrong.
Here's the thing about the age of coronavirus that really disturbs me personally is it's not just the coronavirus. If you get sick right now, you're going to have a little bit of existential dread. Whether it's just a regular flu or even a strong cold, you're going to have those moments where you're going, fuck, have I got coronavirus? Am I going to die? Have I got all my affairs in order? Have I cleared my internet history? What do I have to do, just in case I'm that sick,
That last one, that's something I'd worry about.
Yeah. But, I mean, I've actually not gone to a couple of doctor's appointments just because there was no way to get to them and social distance. I mean, I don't have a vehicle, and I'm in Hillcrest. La Jolla is a really long way away. Certainly you won't make it on foot, so I've basically told my doctors, I'm like, look, either come to a Hillcrest office or I'm going to have to wait until I can get there safely, because what can I do?
Well,
But I mean, I have to admit, that's one of the few ways that I personally have been affected by Corona. I feel very lucky that I've been so well shielded. I look at the stories of other people and I'm like, fuck, that sucks. I mean, I recently gave a bunch of money to a friend who was this close to eviction because she can't work. So,
well, when I was in Britain, I felt incredibly privileged that I had one of the jobs where that was actually furloughed by the government, so that there was never any risk of me losing my job. Turned out that I came over here and didn't have to go back to work, but at least I was getting paid while I was locked down, and I didn't have to worry about it. It was I can't tell you the load it took off my mind. You know what I mean? People didn't have that luxury. People who were self-employed and others weren't getting the benefit from the government. Only people who had certain kinds of jobs were getting it, and I was just lucky enough to be one of those people.
Well, that's what gets me in general with the right-wing mindset, this so resistant to evidence. Kansas a few years ago, Brownback put forward this like super ultra right-wing trickle down. He bought into the entire trickle down because they controlled the state house, he controlled the governorship, and they just pushed it through. And it wrecked the state's economy. I mean, to the point where even typical right wingers were like, "Hey, this was a huge mistake," and they got Brownback got out of there. So, but even there, you would see to hear when this was like the perfect petri dish of how trickle down works or doesn't, and it didn't work. And it's not the only time, but this was where it was really, open. In fact. Not only, and then a lot of right wingers were like, well, other states the whole country was doing bad. I'm like, yeah, but Kansas did worse. If anything, their version, they should have done, even if they were doing badly because it was a recession, they should have done better than everybody else. And they did worse than everybody else. But instead of just saying, oh, our idea didn't work, we tried it and it fell on its face. Let's adjust it maybe. But it doesn't. Like I haven't become over time. I've become more liberal, not because anyone, some ideological thing, because I'm a pragmatist. It came down to, I looked at what worked and what didn't and said, hey, you know what, that shit over there works better. I'm going over to this side.
Yeah. But one of the things about this whole thing, like from the beginning, the Trump administration dropped the ball at the very beginning. And I'm not even talking about masks and lockdown. I'm talking about like basic stuff like jobs and the economy. We have a massive infrastructure problem in this country. Massive. I mean, there's like in the state of New Jersey, they did a survey where it's like 80% of the bridges are like not safe. Okay, so you have all these people now not driving, not on the roads. Nobody's going to work. We need to put people to work and keep money flowing through the system. Hey, how about we fix the fucking roads? I mean, this is something they could have started months ago.
Right. And
that's something I've thought about myself is like if I had, say, George Lucas money or Jeff Bezos money, Flint, Michigan would have drinkable water.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and I think one of the best things you can do with that is you go to like the local government there and you say, hey, I want to donate a bunch of money to start a company that will bring clean water here. And you're only allowed to hire local people to inject money into the economy and all of that. You know, there's so many ways that could turn really well for people. And if I had that kind of money, I would do it.
Well, that's the thing, you know, and to Rob's point, you know, yeah, that's right. That's me, because I'm an engineer.
He's an engineer. He's an engineer right there.
And actually, I'm sorry about that. I'll get to it in a second. But, you know, basically to Rob's point, though, and the other great part about it is if we did do these things like you're talking about, Kate, and what Rob's talking about, not only is it a good time to do it, but also then you're not giving handouts. You're actually paying people to do something of value. So you're not just giving people money. You're actually saying, hey, we need something done. Here's some money. Go do it. So that would be good.
And when the rest of us come out of our caves, we got a brand new country.
What GA 5524 said about lack of engineers is true. I struggle. I've been in business now for 11 years. I struggle to find qualified people who are already here. But if I was willing to import somebody from another country, I could easily get 40 resumes in a week. And I know because I had recruiters sending me a whole bunch of foreign resumes in the past. And I said, hey, look, no, I'm not in a position. I'd rather deal with people here. I don't want to import somebody if I can avoid it. But as a result, I've had a hard time. And of the people I brought in, half the people that I hired, I ended up letting go because they weren't up to the scratch.
Well, I mean, okay. I'm not even going to apologize for mentioning the Alt-Right Playbook again, because you really should. But one of the things that they mentioned was part of the right-wing mindset is that nobody should get what they don't deserve, or they shouldn't get more than they deserve kind of thing. But on the left, and especially for people like me, I have very few material wants at this point. I mean, I'd love to build my dream house, buy a DeLorean, that kind of thing, maybe make a movie, start my own space program, whatever. But there's a certain point where you have so much money that all it is a way to keep score, because you'll never pay for it. You're just in competition to see how much money you can amass compared to the other billionaires out there. And so at that point, I would start like shedding a whole bunch of money that I just plain didn't need. Because what's the point? I don't, you know.
Any civilized society should guarantee a basic minimum standard of living. There are certain things that you should just get for being a member of that society. At the same time, there are things that, you know, I mean, and a lot of people on the left are going to look at me with a, you know, side eye for this, but there are certain things that if you want, but then you got to get your ass to work.
Right.
You know, I mean, yes, there should be a basic minimum, but if you want the latest iPhone, well, then if you ain't working, then you better get your ass and get a job. I mean, you know, so as far as like, wow, I don't know fireworks.
Oh, is that what that was? It sounded like construction.
Right outside of my window.
I thought that was kicking a door.
Yeah, no, it's fireworks.
That must be close.
Oh, I got them around here too, which is why I'm keeping muted for a while.
Well, it's still quite light out there, so I think you're unlikely to see them on my end yet.
Well, and to Kate's point about you know, when people, they don't want people to get something they don't deserve. I mean, this is something that plays us. I've had multiple conversations with right wingers about the prison system. We know that the Scandinavian system works way better. The recidivism is a fraction of what ours is. Some countries, somewhere between 10 and 20%, depending on the Scandinavian country, where we're running around 73%. So their way obviously works better. Fewer people reoffend. So, but the right wingers don't want to do it because that, you know, oh, well, the people that are in jail, like in the Scandinavian system, you get, if you don't know how to read, you get taught how to read, you get health care. If you need mental health services, you get mental health services. You get, and you actually have to get trade skills. So at least when you go back out, you actually have some marketable skill. You can get a job. So the thing is right wingers like, well, they don't deserve that. I'm like, yeah, but it's not about them. It's about you actually, because it makes your life better because there's less crime. You don't have to sit there in an armed camp because the people around you are way less likely to attack you and try to steal your stuff or hurt you because they have a job.
The difficulty, if I may, Rob, sorry, but the difficulty here, Joe, and see, I'm a huge fan of the Norwegian system. When you start to study it a little bit, even just a little bit, you can see it's superior in virtually every way. Their approach is superior, the results are superior, but the problem is you can't just take the prison system from there and import it to America because we also have cultural differences. Sure. Americans are taught from the earliest possible age, even before you go to school. You're competing with each other all the time. You're competing about the clothes you wear, the shoes you wear, the music you listen to, what your hair looks like. When you get a bit older, what kind of car you drive, what your job is, what you do for a living. Everything is a fucking competition. All right. They don't have that there.
Right.
Another thing they have there that we don't have is a standard of living at the very, very bottom is so much higher than the very bottom of ours. I've told this story on my YouTube channel before, so I'm going to keep it brief. But when I was a body piercer 10, 12 years ago, I had this girl come in and she wanted me to pierce her here because she had to take it out because she'd been to prison. All right. And I said, how long you been inside? She said 6 months. I said, how'd you find it? She said, it wasn't so bad. I just missed my daughter. I said, how's old your daughter? She said 18 months. So she was in prison for 6 months. Missed her daughter for a third of her life at that time, right? And I said, well, at least you learned your lesson and you won't do that again. And she's like, well, no, I totally do it again. What she did was she glassed a girl in a nightclub. She ran a broke a glass across the girl's face that scarred her for life, right? Then she did 6 months inside for that and didn't regret it for 1 minute. And here's my lesson, the reason I tell this story. For her, life inside prison, the only thing that made it worse than home was that she missed her daughter. Her life was already so fucking shit that prison wasn't that much worse. In Norway, that's not the case. In Norway, if you lose your liberty, holy fuck, that's a bad thing because your liberty is worth something in Norway.
Right.
It's worth something. Just the idea that you choose what time to go to bed and what time to eat to them is an affront to their fucking dignity because they have a genuine appreciation for their freedom and they don't want to lose it.
Right. Well, that's the thing when people try to tell kids in the hood, don't sell drugs. And look, I don't want them to sell drugs either. But basically, there are no alternatives of anything, any kind of standard of living whatsoever.
Well, there's a sort of thought experiment, and I find it very difficult to get straight answers out of people to this one. But again, going back to my sci-fi fandom. Because this has come up in a lot of sci-fi stories where someone commits a crime. And then for whatever reason, be it hand-wavium or technobabble, they lose their memory entirely. And then they're caught and tried and convicted. What's the point of punishing someone who doesn't remember the crime, doesn't feel like they committed the crime? Is it justice or revenge at that point?
Right. Well, in fact, you're reminding me, see, in Babylon 5,
that's what I was thinking of, the monk dude who got memory wiped.
Yeah, the death of personality. For this way, right? You did something so bad that in the old days we would have just executed you. So now it's the death of personality. So, and that's why you can be let out because whatever was you that was in there that made you be the way you were is gone, and you're this person.
Well, it wasn't just death of personality for him though. It was also and a life of servitude was part of it. Right. That's why he ended up being a monk. But right. Yeah. Sorry, I just watched that part of that episode while I was making a video about sci-fi stuff. So,
yeah.
But I mean, again, I put it to the panel. At what point does justice stop being revenge, or at what point does it start being revenge?
Well, to Paul's point, yeah, we have a different culture, but I think part of the fact that this prison system is so regressive is part of that equation too, as to why it's such a competition. And so, while certainly I would not expect to see the results as good as the Scandinavians if we adopted their system, but we would get better results. And if we start having that mindset that we stop worrying about does everybody deserve every single penny we spent on them, and saying we're spending the money to further the common good. And the common good is less crime and fewer people who are squeezed so badly that that's what they turn to, or where jail's not so bad for them. Because you think about it, I've heard people say like about going into the military, going into jail if you're really poor. It's 3 hots in the cot. They don't, literally, as if you're starving, that's better than that.
Did hear about a guy who was like homeless, and every like 6 months or so he would commit a crime just so they could put him in jail for the winter.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. Wait, I heard about that guy. There was a homeless guy. Yeah, I heard about that guy. Okay, so anyway, Joe was saying before about investing in like prisoners and stuff. That when they get out, they don't have this the very high recidivism rate that we have now. Similar to that, and it's kind of fucked up. We retie prisons and schools, but similar to that, in my town, there was an older individual. I don't know if it was a man or a woman. I don't remember. Who bitched and moaned because they're a senior citizen. They shouldn't have to pay school taxes because they don't have any children in the school system. And when it was pointed out by me that what you're doing is, if you have good schools and the people in your town are educated, the entire town, everyone benefits from this.
Right.
It's a societal benefit to have educated people. And they said, but I'm paying taxes and they won't even let me use the tennis courts on a Thursday. The kids are in school, asshole. You can't use it. The kids are using it. That's the point.
Right. I have something to add to that. In Sonoma County in California, where I come from, they spend 10 times as much per prisoner, keeping prisoners in jail, not prison, but just a county jail, than they do putting a child through school. 10 times as much per prisoner than per student. And if we switch that around, if you spent more money on education than on locking people up, I think we'd have better results.
Absolutely.
Possibly.
Well, exactly, and now some of the other issues, obviously, there's bigotry and stuff like that is racism, and that's one of the reasons why like minority communities where when you had redlining, you actually probably still have secret redlining to this day, and we there's evidence to that effect. But if you can actually start breaking some of those things, you start breaking the cycle. Fewer people are going to jail, fewer people are going back to jail, then the numbers game gets better, and it gets easier to kind of get the institutions to loan money out and to do things and put some investment in, and it feeds itself. And that's the reason why having a higher minimum wage is important, because again, I hate the whole capitalism versus socialism argument, because I think it's a red herring. Because neither one of those systems is inherently good or inherently bad. It's how they get used is what makes them good or bad. But the thing is that certainly in a capitalist economy, if people are doing the work that makes the product, that makes the money, they certainly deserve a commensurate amount of what the value for their labor. And the fact that we know for a fact that that's been going down over the last 50 years. We have graphs that show that the people at the top are keeping a bigger percentage. That's not tenable. And the thing about it that pisses me off about it is that that's not even good for capitalism. Just from a strictly capital, forget everything else, because the engines that make capitalism work has to do with the free flow of money. And of course, if I'm the capitalist and I'm selling things, and I am, so if no one has any freaking money, they can't buy what I sell. So that's bad for me, because the pie, as we've talked before, it's not a pie of a constant size. It's a pie that can grow and shrink. So
and maybe this is oversimplifying it a bit, but the pursuit of money is not in and of itself capitalism. Like the relentless pursuit of money, but that's the way a lot of the 1% are treating it. Right. And it seems like they don't have any long-term vision, where it's like, if I take less at one time, I will get more overall. That's not good enough. They have to make the most they possibly can in the shortest amount of time. And that's what's causing most of the problems, because other people have to foot that bill for them, namely the working class folks whose wages have stagnated.
Well, and the funny thing is, getting the most wouldn't even be so bad if they included the people that were doing the work in the equation. Because that's the thing, if the company makes more money and shares that equitably with the workers, wouldn't be a problem, but they don't, and they keep it for themselves. And that's one of the problems with, so many people have become part of the investor class. what ends up happening is there's too many companies that are publicly, because there's so much money, in the public trading, and of course public trading is actually private money. So what ends up happening is everything is for the next stock report. It's for the short-term gain. It used to be if you bought IBM, you bought Edison, GE, or some utility or whatever, you were looking for a long-term dividend. Very few companies give dividends anymore. Now everyone's looking for what's the quarterly return, what's the quarterly rate of return, and how much did the stock price go up? And so companies do things that are really bad business decisions just so they can make the latest stock report look good, so that their stock price will go up, so they can make the shareholders happy, because the shareholders also don't understand anything anymore.
Sorry, I'm a little pissed off. I just saw someone deleted a comment I had made on Facebook that was rather critical of something he'd said. That I think that's a little on the dishonest side to do that, frankly, but and it's kind of related to what we're saying right now, because the meme he posted was, landlording is not employment income, it's investment income. If you rely on stealing your tenant's labor value through rent to survive, you are a societal parasite. Being a landlord is not a job. Now I have to disagree, because landlords might have to, say, maintain the grounds, the plumbing, the electricity. They have to look at the applications for the new tenants, that kind of thing. If someone moves out, they have to make sure that apartment is ship-shape so that the new renters can see it, that sort of thing. Being a landlord is not just sitting on your ass collecting rent money, unless, of course, you delegate it to someone else. You get a building manager, but even then you have to handle their payroll. So I have to disagree with that, but he deleted my comment. Now I'm kind of cranky.
Yeah, I never bought into the whole concept that rent is theft. It drives me crazy. It's just like, wait, you want to be able to live in someone else's house?
Right.
Really?
Right. Even though it costs, and the funny thing is that would even be against socialism. I mean, this whole thing about socialism is that, because again, we're not talking about communism now, we're talking about socialism. Basically all socialism is that the means of production and distribution are in the public hands.
Well, one thing that's funny about this whole situation I was having on Facebook with this one guy is we've agreed on almost everything for the last 2 years. And this one time we disagree, and all of a sudden my comment is deleted. I don't know. Well,
I got into an argument with somebody a couple of weeks ago, and they were basically going off that simply because I'm an employer, I'm automatically exploiting people. I'm like last year, because it was an off year and I had people that underperformed, so I actually made the least of anybody in the office who was full time, and even fewer than less than something. So I'm like, well, and I did labor. I actually did billable work, and I had to run the company, those things. So where's the value of my labor? My labor is worth something too.
Hang on a second. Joe, hang on. I'm sorry. Curious. Read what you just typed. Read that sentence, and tell me how that makes any fucking sense.
We don't need fair housing. Why don't we need fair housing? Shouldn't we have fair everything, really? I mean, okay, granted, that can be taken to extremes to the point where we're just screwing people over because we're trying to make it fair. But at the same time, I mean, equal opportunity, I guess, even if not equal results.
Well, that's right. Yeah, because fair doesn't necessarily mean everything is linearly equal. It just means that it's proportionate and equitable. That's all. So we're saying we don't need proportional and equitable.
And if you can't afford rent, if nobody can afford rent, then what do the landlords get? Who do they turn to? At some point, you have to remember that we are in a system where, there can be this big cascade effect where if certain people don't have enough money to live, other people aren't getting the money they would have spent, and it all just snowballs.
Right. And here's one thing too, again, about the whole socialism versus capitalism thing. Looking at the European healthcare model, which I'm a fan of in general, in broad terms, I'm a fan of. Well, they still have private companies that deliver health services. Those are capitalist companies. The difference is the state pays. So it's socialist in the handle as far as the state handling the distribution, but they have all the same healthcare companies, all the same pharmaceutical companies that we have. So this idea that it's one or the other, even in countries that are nominally considered like democratic socialist, there's still a hybrid system. But the thing is that the difference is their tax system basically pushes things, incentivizes people to do things more equitably. Because basically, when you have high top marginal rates, you get very. So if I'm going to be taxed at 91%, there's really no point in me making that extra dollar, keeping that extra dollar. But you know what? If I give it to my employee who's at 35% tax rate, well, then they're going to get a much bigger benefit, and I get something out of it too because I got a happier employee. And it really didn't cost me much money because I was only going to get to keep 9 cents. For the cost of 9 cents, my employee got 65 cents. Wow, I'm a hero.
I mean, this goes right back to the tax rate, the top marginal rate in the U.S. from the 1950s up until Reagan became president was at one point up to 92%.
Right.
So we already had that, and with that tax rate, that amount of money, that was what built the middle class. And
Right.
instead of letting the government take money, employers, people who had the money, were giving it to their employees. And yeah, I mean, people go, "Oh, America's great. America's great." Yeah, that's why. That's
Right.
why. It's what.
And I know that a lot of conservatives are not going to like this statement very much, but I think that one of the most patriotic things you can do is pay your taxes. I mean, if you really truly claim to love this country, support it with a few bucks, dumbass.
Right.
Well, I just want to say about paying taxes. Yeah, fine, but I mean, I know you'll agree with this, Kate. I mean, we pay way too much of our taxes goes toward the military, and one of the reasons I think Americans in particular are offended by the notion of paying taxes, as opposed to, say, some of our European counterparts who live in countries just as modern as ours, they don't seem to mind paying their taxes as much. And that's because they're not paying for this inflated military budget, which has 800 military bases around the world. And they're not neo-colonialists, you know. I mentioned this to Sister Danger in the podcast the first time we did it. And she's like, yeah, but we're their military. And it's like, no, nobody wants to attack Norway. Nobody wants to attack Norway because they're not in anybody else's business. You know what I mean? So they don't need that kind of military budget because they don't have the same kind of interests that we do. You could argue that we need to have a huge military budget because we have huge interests around the world that need to be protected. And I could go with that up to a point, but I don't think we need 800 military bases around the world. I don't. Just as an example.
Manufacturing weapons is a profit industry. War is a profit industry. That's part of why we have the military we have. It's part of why we're in the Middle East at the moment. I mean, if it's not for the oil, it's for the bombs and the people who make them. Right. So, I mean, if we can convince ourselves that we're not the world's policemen and reduce the military so we don't have more than the rest of the world combined, that might help a little, just to invest that money in other things.
Well, hell, that's one of the reasons when Bill Clinton was in president, why they were able to finally get a balanced budget after decades, because they cut way down. They closed a lot of military bases, and to be fair, some of that started under Bush the first, but they continued under Clinton, and we cut a lot of programs. And yeah, there was a peace dividend for a while. We actually had a balanced budget, and the thing that gets me again. The conservative view up until 1955 was we maintain small, active military because we don't want to adventure. Because again, libertarians too, you don't want an adventurous president or an adventurous Congress running around and getting involved in foreign affairs that we have no business in, that cost American lives, blood and treasure. And then
the USA had to be dragged into World War II by Pearl Harbor because we were against war abroad.
That's right. So if we actually went with the conservative idea, the right-wing idea of not having a large military, which is what it used to be, we would be in much better shape.
Well, it was around about the Cold War that the parties flip-flopped. That's when that shift happened. Where like if it hadn't been for the Cold War, most of us, if we call ourselves Democrats, would be calling ourselves Republicans instead. It's crazy.
But I'm not even talking about the party thing. I'm just strictly talking right wing. So whether they're libertarian, whether they would be what party they used to be. Literally, if you're on the political right now, you are so out of phase of where people on the political right were 30, 40, 50 years ago. Where again, it was like small military, and I remember even in the 80s, it was like, well, what's the exit strategy? It was always about what's the exit strategy? We're going to get involved. What's the exit strategy? Now we don't even think about that. It was like, oh, we got to fight somebody.
We don't even know what our win conditions are. Like, we don't even know at what point should we even start thinking about withdrawing, because we haven't said this is how we win that war. It's just fight for what end? Mostly oil.
Well, and especially when you consider that we've got this idea now that we have to be in a situation where on day one, we have to be able to fight two simultaneous wars. That was why?
Because the entire reason they're called conservative is because it was fiscal conservatism. What we've seen the change hasn't been so much on the fiscal side. It's been more on the culture ideological side. So that's really where the biggest change came from, and that has informed the fiscal. So now, I mean, as a conservative, you're going to be all for spending money to build bombs to drop on somebody you have an ideological difference with. Right. With those brown people, living in mud huts somewhere on the other side of the world, or in the caves.
Well, I think
I mean, that's the thing. Always need an other, whether it's foreigners, whether it's gays, whether it's whatever. These days, it seems to be trans people. There's always someone that's the enemy that's out to get you if you're a right winger. And it's like, if one enemy is either normalized or gone, they have to move on to another one, because the only way to fire up their base seems to be you have to stop them over there or they'll come over here. Whether that's literal or figurative, you know what I'm saying?
Well, see, the weird thing that's weird to me, though, is that they kind of got almost the worst of both worlds, because they keep the taxes down, but let's have things, spend a lot of money on things that we think we need, even though we really don't, and again, go against former conservative thinking, but let's not tax anybody enough to actually pay for it.
Yeah.
So they always call people on the left tax and spend, but they're borrow and spend, which is way worse.
Well, and you get the like, not even necessarily the military, you get medical, right? Like, there's this company that just developed some drug for COVID, and they got some crazy amount of money, like $70 billion from the government to develop the drug. And now they're selling it at like $3,000 a dose, making money hand over fist and giving none of that money back to the government for their investment, right? And that's
redness fear. What's the name of that drug? It's in the news.
Oh, I don't. It had some funky name that I could never pronounce in a million years. But yeah, the point being that like it's all we get from the government and then keep the profits every time. And by the way, Tommy, December of 75. Sorry, you said how old are you people? December of 75.
Yeah, I was born in 71.
I wonder if there's any conservatives in the chat that are angry that a bunch of liberal people are trying to define conservatism for them, but they're too scared to join the call.
Well, I'm sure it looks like Brock left. He hasn't said anything in ages.
No,
yeah, I noticed he got kind of quiet. He did.
Well, because he had nothing to add. It was just, you guys are saying, okay.
I was hopping on him continuously.
Brock's got thick enough skin for that. Brock doesn't care. Brock literally doesn't care. Okay. So, there's nothing you can say to Brock that'll actually really, really offend him or piss him off. He takes pride in that.
So I want to address something that Mage Grey Wolf just said about some drug costing $10 to make. That's a little misleading, because a lot of times when people say, "Oh, well, this drug costs $10 to make," that's looking at what's the cost of the materials that went into it. That doesn't count the manufacturing cost. It doesn't count the development cost.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. When someone says it costs $10 to make it, they mean the R&D that goes into it. They mean the production. They mean the distribution. They mean the sales. They mean all that stuff.
No, not
really?
No, really. I can give you
I guess in other products it would do then, but I guess drugs are different.
I can give you another analogy for this one. I heard the perfect one where someone's door breaks. So they call a carpenter to come fix it. And they fix it with like a $10 hinge and charge you $100. And it's like, well, why? It only costs you $10 to fix it. Well, yeah, but they also went to school. They also had to set up a business, which cost them a bunch of money. You're not just paying for the parts, and you're not even just paying for the labor. You're paying for all of the effort.
And this is the reason why when drugs go generic, the reason why there's such a big drop, because the companies that make generic drugs spend almost nothing on R&D. They back engineer. They get the formulation. They back engineer it. Way easier. They don't have to spend a decade of going through all the approval and everything. So that cost of that drug is now they're only looking at their manufacturing costs. That's not.
Having said that, the Glaxo Wellcome and other drug making companies, they get these massive endowments from the government for R&D. So we pay for that already. It's not coming out of the shareholders' investment. We're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get the benefit from it. It's
it's like I was saying with the $70 billion to develop this new COVID drug.
Right, and I agree. Any endowment that they get needs to be paid back, really, with interest. But even if you just paid it up straight, I mean, because you can say, okay, you were all benefiting, blah blah blah. But those should be paid back, and I'm with you on that. But the thing is,
or the drug should be available at cost.
Right.
Or the drug should be available. If you're not going to pay back the endowment, then the drug should be available at cost. There should be a markup on it.
Humans.
Yeah. The reason why I say, because I've never worked for a drug company myself, but I have relatives who do, and I've also worked on projects related, where I'm working with the drug companies and also worked with the FDA. So I have a lot of experience in this area. And again, the people who defend them also say a lot of stuff that's not accurate either. So I'm kind of in the middle, because also the other thing, the drug companies do spend money like water. And I've had my friends and relatives who work for pharma. They get mad when I say that. I'm like, well, no, I do work with pharma. I've done work with chemical, specialty chemical, bulk chemical, utilities, personal care products, dairy, food and beverage, water and wastewater. I've been across a ton of different industries. Nobody spends money like pharma does. Nobody. So they spend a lot more money than they should, and that affects the prices as well. But it's not. And the thing is that we also have to remember too, the drugs that fail, the drugs that don't get approved, they get paid for by the ones that do. So you should have to remember that as well. So you do have to amortize those costs. But yeah, the fact that we're giving them endowments and they're not paying them back, that's a problem. That's a serious problem.
And no business venture is guaranteed either. I mean, suppose they got that $70 billion and produced bupkis. I mean, if that $70 billion hadn't come from the government, if it had been their own money that they put into R&D, they're not getting it back.
Right.
But they expect, our profits are guaranteed because this is subsidized by the government. Even if we don't make a profit, we lose nothing. But if we do make a profit, we keep all of it.
Oh, I mean, look at what ACT UP did in the 80s. And they basically shamed the drug companies into lowering the cost for HIV drugs.
Yeah.
Because there are life-saving drugs that they received money from the government to develop, and then they had them so expensive nobody could get them.
Yeah. Now, one thing that a lot of people aren't aware of, though, and it's weird. The drug companies will do this, but they don't advertise it because they're hoping you won't ask. But basically, if you are indigent, or really, you don't have to be indigent, but if you're basically poor and you can't afford your medication, there are programs that the drug companies have that will give you either super cheap or free drugs. But they don't advertise it because they don't want everybody eligible for it to actually knock on their door and ask, because of course they get to keep the money. But if you actually knocked on their door and asked, they give it to you.
I love what Tommy just said.
Tommy, right? I was just going to go there. Two things. What Tommy just said. He's rock climbing, while Brock is jogging. So we understand.
Yeah.
And the other thing was I going to say? You're finally letting me talk. What?
Badger
Um,
My insurance. I had a problem with my insurance. A few months ago, and I was fighting with the insurance company. I was fighting with the state. I was fighting with the pharmacy because I was out of meds, my HIV meds. And if you don't know anything about, if you know me, you know something about HIV and HIV meds. It's been a big part of my online life is talking about these issues. But if you don't know, if you have HIV and you miss your medication, even one day, one dose, the virus in your body could mutate to become immune to the drug. So missing a dose is bad. It's very, very so anyway, so I was out of meds. My insurance wasn't covering it. It was supposed to be like an automatic renew. I went to pick up my meds and nope, sorry, can't help you. The drug manufacturer actually gave me a month's supply. The pharmacist called them and said, look, this guy's got a problem with the insurance. He's been getting these meds for years. They go ahead. And they gave me a month. You're talking, that was like a couple $1,000s worth of drugs that you just said, here, just take them. So yes, what Joe is saying, that the drug companies, they don't like you to know it, but if they're approached the right way, if you go through the right channels and everything else, they'll just give them to you.
Well, I've got something to say on this topic that also branches out into other topics. I'm in kind of a weird financial situation because while I own a condo, what I make from YouTube, which is my only source of income, is technically less than minimum wage. And as a result, I qualify for so many things, like, for example, what they call Medi-Cal, which is California's medical, like Medicare system. They paid $300,000 for the seizure brain surgery. Not a dime out of pocket. The only thing I had to pay for was the Uber ride to the hospital. That was it, right? And also I've had food stamps too, kind of thing. And yet, because my like I don't have to worry about rent and I don't have a vehicle and I don't have kids, the mere pittance, the less than minimum wage I make off of Patreon, I'm socking away a couple $100 a month, to the point where, like I said earlier, a friend of mine needed some charity because she was about to be evicted. I only sent her like 3 times what she asked for and told her it was a gift. Don't pay me back. You know, that kind of thing. But I think the point is that if I am not paying for all of this stuff that people take it for granted, they have to pay for it. It's kind of like getting UBI in a way, because I live very well on next to no money when certain necessities are taken care of. And I think that's why we need UBI, because it would take so much stress out of people's lives. You know,
and Medicare for all. I agree.
And also, again, if people have an extra $2,000 a month, what are they going to do? They're going to spend it. It'll only help the economy. Yeah, but again, there's that lack of long-range thinking.
We found ourselves in a situation where we're working to live. I mean, we're living to work rather instead of working to live. You know, you should work and be able to get your paycheck and you know, buy your groceries and you live your life and you live. But we're not doing that. All of our lives are being taken up by work. So
yeah, I mean,
having the job.
Truth is, if I was getting UBI and the money from YouTube, I'd kind of be rolling in dough. I'd travel, I'd buy my dream car, all of this stuff. It'd be a blast. But I'd still keep working. I mean, I've got this huge animation project I'm working on. It's some of my best work ever. I got some amazing voice actors. It's not like I would just laze about doing nothing. Hell no, I'll keep busy.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you know, and I'm still waiting for a UBI proposal that I think is workable, but certainly if people are not under stress, plus how many people that would be working in jobs where they're better suited if they didn't have to worry quite so much about how much they make.
Yeah. Oh, because you're always hearing about people who had to stay in a shit job because they couldn't leave because they wouldn't have their insurance because their insurance is tied to their job, that kind of thing.
That's something freeing for me, is that I have the VA for my health care. And I had the ability to take a part-time job that pays a lot of money as a contractor because they don't give health care. And so I'm able to go to grad school and just work part-time so that I have time to study.
Yeah. I mean,
what the green machine is saying there with Alaska has a UBI. I thought it was a little different though, wasn't it? Like you make the state gives a bunch of money to people for the logging industry or something.
When I lived in Alaska for 2 years, and back then you have the state dividend, where it depends on the price of oil as to how much your state dividend is, because basically. When they did the Alaskan pipeline, the oil was considered the property of the peoples of Alaska. So you get a dividend on the sale of the oil. So back in those days, I think the dividend was about $900 back then. I don't know what it would be now, but that's a once a year payment.
Tommy, as soon as you're done water skiing, it would be a good idea if you jumped on.
Yeah. Although, I realize you're just being silly, but the truth is I would have held my nose and voted for Yang. He was third on my list. Bernie, Tulsi, Yang, no one else appealed to me. Biden wasn't even on my list.
I really liked Tulsi Gabbard, Kate, until I started to find out about the fact that she used to sort of support torture, and for me that's a red line.
I never heard that before.
Yeah, that's right, when she first became a member of Congress, and she was sort of using the whole ticking bomb scenario as a possible justification for torture. And I'm sorry, for me personally, anybody that goes down the road that torture's okay under condition X, Y, or Z, they've lost me.
Well, that gives me something to think about.
It's just not okay. Well, there was that, and there was also the thing about she's very close to the sort of nationalist Hindu party in India, which really disturbs me, because these people right now are pogroming fucking Muslims in various Indian cities. It's ugly what's been going on in India over the past sort of 6 to 9 months, and she's right behind those guys. So there's a couple of things about Tulsi Gabbard that I find disturbing, but generally speaking, her rhetoric about being against war and about winding down our stuff abroad, 1,000% behind her.
The two things you just said are things I hadn't heard. They certainly didn't come to my attention during the primary. And like I said, that gives me something to think about. But you're right. In general, I liked her direction.
She also had some odd things to say about abortion rights, which turned off a lot of people. And I couldn't quote it right now. But
earlier in her career, and I know that
recent.
That was recent.
Yeah, it was within this election cycle.
I know she had a lot of things earlier in her career that she changed.
She said some anti-LGBT stuff, I believe.
That was when she was running for Congress, I think. Yeah,
and I at first I was just like, oh, to hell with her, because of that. But you know what? I'll be the first one to yell at people for not allowing people growth. So it's like, okay, eventually I kind of gave her a pass and stopped complaining about that.
Well, because her voting record is totally pro-LGBT. I mean, her actual voting record in Congress is spotless on that regard.
And that's one of the reasons why I don't want to vote for Biden, is because people keep saying, look, he keeps evolving on the issues. I'm like, yeah, but he spent multiple decades like supporting things that I would never, ever, ever touch with a 10-foot pole. And they're like, yeah, well, you got to give him a chance to evolve. I'm like, I don't think he has. I think he's paying lip service.
Well, the thing is, with Gabbard, though, like I don't like Gabbard. I didn't want her to be the nominee. But if she was the nominee, I'm voting for her.
I mean, like Yang, I would have supported Yang. I liked Yang. I would have supported Yang, but I didn't, because this is a bad reason. I didn't think he would get enough support to be relevant long term, and I know it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I get that. See, Kate's looking at me like, yes, that's the fucking problem, and you're right, it's the problem. But I'm just me. You know what I mean? 300 million other people, and that's what I was thinking. They're not going to be on the same page as me, so I'm not going to be on the same page as me.
Well, I was actually not so much thinking about what you said specifically with regard to Yang, but rather the arguments I'm having right now about third parties. Yes.
Well, the thing for me about Yang, though, is I didn't support Yang not because I didn't think he could get support. My thing was, to me, it was a one-trick pony, and I wasn't totally sanguine with that trick. So.
Again, well, I think that's unfair, Joe. If you really looked into Yang, he wasn't a one-trick pony. He just had one trick that no one else was really talking about. He was on board with Medicare for All, for example. Just as an aside, you know. And there's lots of other things. He's a pretty progressive guy, but yeah, his one trick, as you put it, it was a pretty big deal, and he actually advanced the conversation. And since COVID, all of a sudden, it's become like this really popular idea. Even Trump talked about possible.
Well, as I said, and look, if Yang had been the nominee, I would have voted for him.
Although it's funny because, and this is just me again being picky and fangirling, but there is a sci-fi series I read with a planet that lives off of something similar to UBI, except they called it a basic living stipend, or BLS. And so, of course, when UBI comes out, I'm like, but that's BLS. Call it BLS, not UBI. You know, it's just I don't know. It's
like Yang was important. I mean, you know what? He'll be remembered because he was important. He changed the conversation, much like Bernie Sanders changed politics forever. Like he didn't. I would have loved Bernie. I was a Bernie guy, and I happily just in the primary voted for Bernie, knowing that there's obviously Joe was already the candidate, but I don't care. I voted Bernie anyway because Bernie's my guy.
Well, I mean, speaking as someone who was raised in South Burlington, which is literally within screaming distance of Burlington, Vermont, Bernie was mayor through my entire childhood. Of anyone on this panel, I'm probably best equipped to know what Bernie Sanders is really like.
So I want to just even though he didn't win, and the man is not obviously now he's 1 million years old. He's never going to be president. I'm okay with that. Like I made peace with that because Bernie Sanders changed the way we talk about politics. He changed the discussion. Single-handedly, he changed the entire game. He is the most consequential politician of our lifetime, other than Trump, unfortunately.
Well, in my darker moments, I have this hope that either Joe Biden succumbs to old age or gets COVID or something, and we have to have a different nominee before the election. And I don't know what would happen if that happened. I mean, would it just be, well, Bernie's the next highest in delegates? Would it be we have to do the primary? I mean, what happens if that happens?
I think a lot of people would be saying what you just said, but there would also be this massive push for the center to go, no, hair on fire.
I think it would throw everything into disarray
all over again.
Yeah, I would say it'd be very chaotic.
Well, Trump has been talking about dropping out of the race himself. And we haven't had a Republican primary yet. So if he decides to drop out because he's a big whiny bitch, what happens?
Well, here's the thing. What happens is in both cases it would go to the convention. So now Bernie wouldn't have enough delegates. Neither would Biden at that point. I don't think. Well, certainly if he died or if he dropped out. So then what would happen is they would do
have a lack of delegates.
So at the first ballot, no one would have enough. So then they'd have a second ballot, and then the superdelegates get involved. Which are only they're a small fraction compared to where they were before, and then they would vote. And so Bernie would probably win, but we don't know. It depends on what coalition was put together at the convention. Same thing with Trump. If Trump dropped out before the convention, then they will. I mean, that doesn't make Pence automatically the nominee. They'll it'll be brokered in that case because they didn't have anybody running, or that they took seriously. They would basically
let's just go down that very dark rabbit hole. Let's just say they had to do. Who would they put up if not Pence?
Wasn't there a guy who tried to challenge Trump like almost a year ago?
Justin Amash.
There was a couple even during some of the primaries
Joe Walsh.
too.
Well, that's
Joe Walsh, Justin Amash, and Mitt Romney considered it.
I think it was the Justin fellow I'm thinking of.
Justin Amash, yeah.
The problem is Justin Amash has quit the party though, so
I don't know. It was a while ago this happened. I don't remember names. In fact, that's one of the symptoms that still is there from the seizures. Is my memory for names is utter shite.
He did put his hat in the ring for a Republican nomination, and when they shut down, basically just a lot of states canceled their primaries. He said, screw this noise, and he quit the party.
Phoenix Writer is right. If they were smart, they would put up Nikki Haley. If they were smart,
yeah.
I don't think I know that name.
Nikki Haley was the ambassador to the United States.
I heard Nikki Haley. I was okay.
Oh, Haley.
And I just want to address something that Curious said a while back. He goes, "Why is pro-gay always a good thing?" Like because gay people exist and deserve the same rights as everybody else. That's why.
Like
Why-
why pro-gay is bad? I mean, I would love to know the circumstances under which pro-gay is bad.
There's no, to my knowledge, I've never seen any gay rights issue that wasn't about them getting equal rights to everybody else. So I know the right wing likes to painted that they're looking for special rights, but they're not. So if equal rights is a debate topic for you curious, well, you know how I think about that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to do a lot of mental yoga to say that gay marriage is special rights. You know, you have to say, okay, given that marriage is between a man and a woman, let's take that as axiomatic. Now it's special rights, but we don't take that as axiomatic, which is why it's not special rights. If anything, straight marriage is special rights until we get gay marriage. Of course, you know what the hell I'm saying.
And the argument also a lot of times is it's additional rights. It's an additional right. No, it's not. Because as a straight person, if you want to marry someone of the same sex, you now can.
Right, right.
It's a universal right.
In fact, most states, and the reason why in most states where it went the way it did was because none of the state law, or very few of the state laws, actually specifically called marriage out as between a man and a woman. It didn't bring your anatomical sex, gender identity into the equation at all. It just said two people. And then the courts were like, well, we see nothing in the law that would prohibit it. It's just that as a functional matter, you were denying people with really against violating those states' constitutions, and that's why those states ruled in that way to say, no, you're violating the state constitution by not letting people of the same sex marry. And then that's when and eventually went obviously to the federal level, but that's really where it was.
I just found it amusing back in the day because the whole argument seems to me to be like marriage means something beyond which we can tamper. In other words, we're not the ones responsible for deciding what it is.
Covenant with God.
Of course we are. So, marriage is whatever the fuck we decide it to be. I mean, it's so obvious to me that back in the day, I just got tired of those conversations not tired of them because I think they were worth having. But at the same time, it's just like, I don't know, it's like talking to the wall sometimes, people they're stuck in their dogma.
We could get into the whole thing about whether rights exist as something, again, axiomatic, or is it something human created? I lean towards human created. I don't think we have any rights that we haven't decided for ourselves, but you get a lot of folks who are saying, I have a right to life. Really? Do you? Show it to me.
Yeah, the funny thing about that is nature's going to kill every single one of us. So, you don't have a right to life. Oh, what you've got a right to is eventual death. That's what you got.
Well, my favorite was when they would say, "Oh, you're redefining a word." I'm like, words get redefined all the time. You go back and read Beowulf. Try to read Beowulf and see if you can. Because it doesn't look much like the English we speak today.
Are you guys hearing my neighborhood explode?
What's that?
Are you hearing the neighborhood explode outside my house? I'm hearing a lot.
Earlier today, they were shooting off their guns over on the other mountain over there. I don't know. I guess that's the closest thing to fireworks they have.
It's not dark enough here for fireworks.
Like for loads of rounds. Yeah.
I mean, it's actually not as bright as it looks because, camera and light, yay, but still way too bright for fireworks back there. Probably not for
it's
another.
Gone down here about 20 minutes ago.
Hour and a half, 2 hours before any fireworks start.
Yeah, they're going off here. I can hear them now.
So the voting thing, I know how. I have a solution to the left, right.
You say voting or cloning?
Voting.
Okay.
Voting. The voting issue. I have a solution to our left-right issues. Ranked choice.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yes.
My question is, how do we get it when the people who have to approve it are folks with a vested interest in it not happening?
It would have to start at a county level, then a state level. So that's why we got Rob running for freeholder, right? So it starts at a county level. We have to completely do away with the old system, put in the new, prove to the state that it can be done, right?
Maine did it.
Okay.
That's the other thing to remember too. Certainly for House and Senate, all those elections are not handled at the federal level. They're handled at the state level. So you'd have to go to each state and get each state to change. So, and I think it's a good thing. I think that would be healthy for everybody, and certainly make third and fourth and fifth parties potentially viable. But there's not going to be. It's not something anyone can do on the federal level.
All parties are viable. All. As long as you can get people to vote for them, all parties are viable. That's a mindset. Honestly, I've been arguing with people for ages where they go, third parties can't win. And I say, well, not with that attitude, they can't. Well, voting for a third party is a waste. Okay, what happens if we all waste our votes together? It's the whole circular, self-fulfilling prophecy thing that's been getting under my skin for ages.
I agree with you. I do. I really do, Kate. I really do. The problem is this election. And since the beginning of the country, since the inception of this country, every election has been, we are fighting for the soul of our nation. Mm-hmm. 99% of the time, it's bluster and it's bullshit. And I don't believe that to be the case now. I really do believe we are fighting for the survival of our republic. So
I don't think just our republic, though.
I'm willing to take that chance. Like you're talking about, not this year.
No, but see, that's the thing. It's always not this year. It's always not this year. Always.
I know.
Yeah.
But you got to admit it's different. But you have to admit that this is different.
I don't have to admit that at all. I don't. But I mean, damn it, I was going to say something before you on that. Okay, I know what it is. Part of why I've been as rabidly anti-Biden as I've been anti-Trump is just because I'm feeling a time crunch right now. We needed to start moving the Overton window back to the left 40 fucking years ago, and we didn't do it, right? And right now, we're looking at 100-degree temperatures in the frickin' North Pole. If we don't get some people who are very, very, very pro-fighting climate change, pro-green energy, and all of that stuff, and if we don't get them now, we could be fucked in 50 years. We're coming up towards a bunch of points of no return. We need someone who's a progressive now. We don't have time for 4 years of Biden or Trump. And we certainly don't have time for, because like when we vote for a lesser evil, usually we end up with an even greater evil than the last greater evil next time. We need to break that cycle. And so that's why, like, I get a lot of people who are losing their shit and even unfriending me. I'm looking at you, Matt Delaconte, because I won't support Biden. And I'm sick. They won't even listen to my reasons for it. And it's so frustrating.
Well, see, I see both sides of this argument. As we discussed this last week, but you weren't here at the time, Kate. But I mean, I see both sides of it because from my point of view, personally, I can't live with myself if I don't affirmatively reject Trump with my vote. That's just me. That I can fully respect your position because it comes from a point of principle. And for me, voting should be about principle. Bottom line, end of story. So that's where the principle, you have the value for you. I totally get it, man.
It's not just principle, though. I mean, you've described my position as coming from principle, and it is, but it's also coming from tangible effects, like benefits and detriments. If we don't do something about the planet now, we won't have a planet in 100 years, 80 years, 60 years, something, and we need to do something now. So
and I agree with that 1,000%, but we can do that without the government to some degree. You know, what we could, 71% of all the greenhouse emissions are emitted by 100 companies. That's where we have to tackle this shit, is at the corporate level. And yes, we need government to do that. I'll grant you that. But we can also do that with our fucking wallets, our spending habits, our voting habits. It's not just down to the president. It's not. There's other ways we can still. There's other ways to attack this problem. I agree, it's a problem.
But politicians are in bed with those companies, though. That's part of the problem. You can't look at it as a separate issue.
I agree with you. I can't argue that.
All right.
Well, and it also has to happen on the state level, though, too. In fact, because of what you're saying, it was true that there's those 100 companies. That could happen on state levels. It doesn't even need the federal government necessarily to do that. But again, because everyone focuses on the president and they don't focus on those other, because you need to do those as well. I'm not saying don't look at president, but you also need to do it on the other levels because it's not going to work only at the federal level. It's just not.
Well, but that's one of the things, like, people look at me like I grew 3 heads and all of them have runny noses when I tell them I'm not voting against Trump, that I'm voting for policy, and it just doesn't compute. It completely breaks their brain. They're like, yeah, but Trump. And I'm like, okay, name something that Biden will do that will make him a good president. Well, he'll do all of these things that Trump won't. He'll roll back this, that, or the other thing that Trump did. And I'm like, okay, but give me an explanation of how Joe Biden will be a good president, and don't mention Trump in any way. And they can't do it.
I don't know. Well, I know they can't do it, but I'm not going to bother with it right now. But the whole thing is that, I guess what I'll just say is, I mean, you can vote any way you want. Obviously, Kate, no one can prevent you from doing what you want.
Yeah.
But my whole thing is, and I get your point. I don't disagree with you about climate change. Obviously, it's the number one issue. But the fact of the matter is that the candidate you're looking for is not on the ballot.
Well, maybe people should have thought about how folks might vote in the general election when they were voting in the primary. Because this whole idea, like, the idea seemed to be, oh, well, in the primary you vote for who you want, and in the general you vote for who got nominated. And it seems, again, to be breaking a lot of people's brains when folks like me and other folks on the progressive wing are saying no to them, that we're not going to fall in line like good little drones. That's, like I say, it's breaking their brains.
That's fine, Kate. But again, that you said it should have happened during the primary, and that's why my attitude is the fact that, because the primary turnout's always terrible. And it was terrible this time. It was terrible last time. It's always terrible.
Again,
So let me finish. The idea, though, is that the progressive people who wanted that change didn't show up in sufficient numbers. So they
well, there's reasons for that.
No, that's bullshit. Everyone who wanted Bernie and didn't show up, they also bear some culpability. You went out and
you know who else bears responsibility is the people who were suppressing votes. There were people who stood in line to vote for 7-8 hours and never got a chance
that wasn't the
because they didn't have enough voting machines, because they had closed voting locations, this, that, and the other thing. There was a lot of shenanigans going on.
But here's a quick thing, Kate, though. You know who controls that? Not the DNC. That's controlled by the states' boards of elections. And all those states you're talking about, they're all red states. Republicans control those states. So you get mad at the DNC, but they did not have.
I didn't say I was mad at the DNC. I never said DNC.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, many people who hold the same position as you otherwise have tried to blame the DNC for that, but that's not the case. Also, and as I said before, in these things, in South Carolina, black people showed up in droves. So if black people could show up to vote, where the hell were all the white people?
Well, I'll tell you this much. Part of why Bernie didn't win the nomination was actually the young. Like, the younger voters have a tendency to sit on their asses. If they had gotten out, it would have been all right. And I mean,
so be mad at them. I'm mad at them.
Well, I mean, I understand what it's like to be a teenager or a young 20-something and have that sort of, I don't want to go out attitude. And that's annoying. But of course, now we've got people like Trump trying to say, well, you shouldn't be allowed to vote by mail. And if you do, it should, like he'll defund states that won't vote by mail.
I think I have to jump in, because there's one thing I have to say, which I don't see is getting discussed very much. I mean, I'm a huge Bernie bro, right? I backed Bernie last time and this time, and I absolutely believe Bernie would be the best possible president the United States could have in my lifetime. I genuinely believe that, and I really wish that Bernie could be president. Having said that, what Bernie did wrong this time, that's, to me, kind of obvious. He didn't really try to court the Southern vote in any general way. And the thing about that is, that's a huge part of the African-American vote is in the South. And so an awful lot of the people I follow on Twitter, he wasn't trying to pay attention enough to the African-American vote, whatever that means. I don't know. Because he had, like, his campaign manager was Nina Turner. And so I don't know. Is there a problem with the whole black faces in high places thing? That's just not enough for some people.
Okay, so
I don't understand what was missing from Bernie's campaign. Because to me, he didn't try to court the South. And that's the only thing.
I'll tell you what was missing from it. He refused to go for the jugular on anybody. Like, he was trying to play the nice guy. He was trying to say, here's what I stand for, without saying, and here's why what my opponent stands for sucks. He wouldn't.
That's
do
because
that.
he got burned for going through the jugular on Hillary last time, and the party never for it. The Hillary supporters never forgave him for it.
But the thing is, he still should have in this election. There were so many opportunities he had, and I think a lot of people looked at him as kind of wimpy. And I wish he had gone for the jugular in all of the debates, because I think it really would have energized people a lot more. And it would have put forth his points a lot better, too. There were so many times where I'm watching him up on the debate stage going, come on, coach, put me in. I got this.
So first, Tommy will not be on to whoop our asses because he's water skiing. I don't know if you saw that.
I thought it was parasailing.
No, I think he's water skiing now. He said 11 o'clock he was going to go water skiing. So there's that. So unfortunately, we're not going to get our asses kicked by Tommy.
Damn.
And the other thing is one thing to remember in the South, and with the black vote in particular, when it came to Bernie, is in 2016, there was a media narrative that was put out, basically saying that all of Bernie Sanders' support was white. It was all young white men. He was already fighting a narrative that existed that was pitted against him from the beginning, that stuck with him. Whether it was true or not is irrelevant.
I think South Carolina's result kind of proved that I think that narrative stuck, or something stuck. I think there's an element of distrust for whatever reason I can't identify, because as far as I'm concerned, just all by itself, the policy of Medicare for all should appeal to everybody, regardless of your demographic or your ethnicity.
But how are you going to pay for it?
With money. Everybody benefits equally. That's the beautiful thing about Medicare for all. Everybody gets a piece of it. Everybody. So.
Well, that was another reason. Another thing Bernie did wrong is every time I asked him, how are you going to pay for it? He didn't answer. And that was another moment where I was like, come on, coach, put me in. I got this. Because how you pay for it is quit the wars, right? Bring the troops home. Shrink the military and thus shrink the military budget, tackle big pharma and tell them you can't price gouge, and all of a sudden the costs are way the hell down and we have way more money. It'll be so much easier to pay for it that way. But he would never say that, and it was so frustrating.
Well, and that's on him. He should have. I agree with you. He should have said that. Yeah. But again, I'm not willing to give young people a pass, because young people, they're more connected than any of the older people. Their heads in the right place as far as the issues go. They're more informed than young people were years ago, and they all have social media and they can organize. If they're the ones that are basically they're the ones going, okay, boomer and all this kind of stuff, if they can spend all that time and getting involved in these issues and not show up to vote, I'm not going to give them a pass for it. That's bullshit. If you want something, you have to go and take the steps to make it happen. And they had the opportunity and they failed. And then so I'd say another mistake of Bernie's part is he banked on the young people to come out, and they didn't. And they didn't come out the previous time. So to me, I was foolish. If he had tried to look past them and don't depend on them, he might have been able to appeal to a wider audience, but he didn't. That's his fault. At least some of that's his fault.
I mean, yeah, but I'm not sure I agree with you to the degree that it's his fault. I mean, let's face it, we've all been kids. We've all been young teenagers. We've all been young 20-somethings. You know what it's like. I mean, maybe if I look back at my past self back then, I'm not sure whether I'd give myself a pass or not if I didn't vote. But even so, I can't land on myself like an anvil for it either.
Right, but my point is that strategically, he knows that. He knows that young people are pretty unreliable when it comes up to voting. So you can't bank on the fact that, hey, I got 80% support of the young people, and then focus on that and then be surprised when they once again don't show up. Now,
well, hold on. Do you think he really banked on it as much as you seem to be implying?
There's the campaign was definitely depending on a better turnout than they got. So
okay, but I have to say, and I know we've already gone over this weeks and weeks ago, guys, and I hate to rehash, but I mean, there were so many fucking shenanigans, okay, and the shenanigans have everything to do with why the young didn't turn out as well. Because if you get the idea that trying is not going to make a difference anyway, you're not, it's the cards were so clearly stacked against one. You know, personally, for me, that would have motivated me to get my ass out even more. But I think a lot of people, it's just like, oh, you know what? They're never going to let us win anyway, so fuck it.
Yeah, but why, I don't understand cynical 20-year-olds. I mean, 20-year-olds supposed to be the idealist, and they're the ones with the fire. I get a cynical 50-year-old because you've been beaten down by life and you gave up and you figure out what's the use. I get that.
Okay, when the whole like Gen X grunge counterculture thing happened, I had just graduated high school. Believe me, I've met more than my fair share of cynical 20-somethings.
Oh, I'm sure you have. But my thing is, and again, now I voted in I haven't voted in every local election, but I voted in every governor's race, every president's race, and every state assembly and federal assembly that I was eligible for my entire life from when I was 18. So to me, I couldn't wait to vote. So again, I have a hard time. I don't understand people that don't get involved and then complain. I guess if you don't care, that's fine. But if you complain about it and then don't follow up, then that person has some culpability in what happened.
So Tommy, I hope you join the stream when you come back from your moon landing.
Well, no, he's doing open heart surgery now.
Thus the basis of the joke.
Oh. Sorry.
What the frick just happened there?
Yeah.
Camera slipped or something.
Somewhere.
Oh, because honestly, it looked like a shelf had fallen on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole ceiling.
Well, I'm just glad that it seems like Trump is collapsing in the polls. He finally pissed off enough Republicans that there's at least some people pulling away from him.
Well, Russia paying bounties on American soldiers. It's hard for Republicans, being that they are the the military party. I can't figure out how that makes any fucking sense. But
well, I'm old enough to remember when the GOP lost their shit when 4 soldiers died in Benghazi.
Yep. And had multiple investigations, each which said that there was no wrongdoing by Hillary or Obama, but they kept investigating anyway.
And it's really hard to believe that 9/11 was about 19 years ago. Like, it feels like yesterday. It's weird.
Yeah.
It is weird. Because, it's pretty clear in my mind, that's for sure.
Hard again.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Listen, guys, I think it's about time for us to wrap up the stream. We're just over 3 hours now.
Fair enough.
Shall we circle around to the beginning, or shall we come up with some arcane way to end the show a different way? You tell me.
Everyone get naked. No, I'm kidding.
I'm gonna leave it up to Sue because we haven't heard much from Sue for a while. So Sue, how shall we end the show, babe? You tell me.
Well, it is the 4th of July, at least.
Okay. So I shall shoot fireworks. Here, I've got a lighter. Ready? You didn't really think I'd do that, did you? I have some dignity, some just a slight amount.
Well, I think one of the things that we talked about earlier is what does it mean to be what does it mean to celebrate the 4th of July? What does it mean to be the American? That's a good way to circle back, I think. I'm sure we all have our own little definition of that.
What's yours?
I think it's a lot of things for me. I mean, since I've had the experience of living in another country, I never realized the benefits that I had in this country until I was out of there. So I always tell people, you have to get outside of your home to appreciate the home that you have, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
Sure, I can relate to that.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. And I mean that I realized because when I lived overseas, in Korea especially, you're treated a lot differently there. And when you are the minority, there's a lot of things that click in. I used to work with a lot of international students when I was in the university. And I understood, but I didn't really get it until I was overseas. I was studying. I was getting certificates. I was doing all this stuff. And then one day it's like, I get why it was hard. I get why you had language issues. And that's why I say, go at least 1 to 2, 3 years. Go outside. Get outside of here. Go out with bodies. Once the COVID stuff kind of calms down, I do. But do that. You'll be surprised what you lack or don't have until you come back here.
Yeah, I spent a week and a half in Cuba once, and believe me, I know.
Right. See?
I spent 2 weeks in British Guiana, formerly British Guiana, and when I landed at JFK, I kissed the ground because I was happy. That said, I grew up kind of idealistic and everything, and to me, I thought of it today. It was probably the first time I didn't really celebrate Independence Day, because it came, it just really kind of fell on me that for my ancestors, it wasn't Independence Day. So, so for me, it's like, okay, that's fine. It was Independence Day for some people, but not for me.
I think the words of Frederick Douglass are weighing heavily on a lot of people in this country today. I've seen people post things that he had written, some of his speeches and all that stuff over the years. But what is the 4th of July to a slave? This year, it's everywhere, and it's just like, 168 years later, and how relevant his words still are. I think those sentiments are weighing heavily on a lot of people this year.
Yeah, because even after all that time, we're still fighting to be fully citizens, to be treated fully like citizens. And I'm just tired. I'm just so tired. 51, and I'm just so tired of it. That's why, to me, Juneteenth meant a lot more this year than 4th of July.
Well, maybe it's just an after effect of having been raised by hippies. I don't know, but I've never really looked at the 4th of July as anything other than, yay, fireworks, maybe a barbecue. It's kind of like how Christmas, because I was never a Christian, was always just presents, candy canes, tree, and carols, and that was it. It's just, there's no real connection for me between, say, Thanksgiving and the Pilgrims. It was just, let's get together for a meal. And it's the same with the 4th of July. I don't know. I mean, I'm an American citizen, and lately I've been feeling very ashamed of my country. I see those memes where people are like, how Americans see themselves, and it's always this right-wing vision, how the world sees them. And I'm like, you realize that a lot of us are ashamed of those people, right? A lot of Americans don't like them and don't want to be seen in any of those examples. So like I say, I'm a citizen of this country, but I don't feel that connection that some people do. It's disconnected. Like the celebration of the 4th of July is disconnected from the nation itself for me. Maybe I'm just strange like that. I don't know.
Go back to what you had basically asked about, like what it means. But for me, saying no, it's a pretty big deal.
Just being able to not conform.
Yep.
Mm.
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't do like the pledge. Holding an elected seat, like I am currently holding an elected seat. At the beginning of every meeting, they do the pledge. Because of COVID, all the meetings are on Zoom. And when I do the pledge, I turn my camera off. Because, no.
Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to Queen Frag and her mighty state of hysteria.
Well, I mean, for me, I grew up in a small rural town in Northern California, and for me, the 4th of July was kind of cool because almost every year my parents would throw a party on the 4th of July, and it was also kind of interesting because my dad, and by dad I mean my stepdad who raised me. My dad, though, is the only person I've ever met in my entire life. Kate, my dad doesn't like music.
Any music?
Correct.
Wow.
Well, dwell on that for a second.
That's bizarre.
Wait, what?
Right. Every year on the 4th of July, he would get out these Johnny Horton records. I think it was like 2 albums that he had. It's like this marching music, and he would put his headphones on and listen to both sides of this marching band music on the 4th of July, and then he'd have his party in the nighttime. And that was like every year when I was growing up. And it was like one of my dad's like patriotic rituals that he had. And I just found it kind of amusing because, like I say, other than that Johnny Horton album, he doesn't like music at all. And I just find that like an alien concept.
Me too. That's totally like mind blown.
Yeah, that's just weird. I don't think I could live without music. That drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Music is one of the reasons why I'm still alive.
Yeah. Music is one of the like I've got some weapons grade ADD, and the only thing that makes the brain monkeys shut up is music.
I can literally say that my children wouldn't be here if it wasn't for music, because I met my first wife while I was DJing on the radio, and she called me up to request a song. So if she called me up to request a song, I wouldn't have ever moved to Britain. I wouldn't have 2 kids, or those 2 kids anyway. My whole life would be different if I didn't answer the phone that day. You know?
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. What about you, Michael? July thoughts?
Well, I wasn't born on the 4th of July, but I was born in April. And if you count 9 months back, that means that that's when my parents conceived me. So that's what this means to me. The inception of our country, and also fireworks. Lots of
motivated your parents.
fireworks that remind me that my parents fucked. Yes.
Yeah, you're a patriot, baby. You're a patriot, baby.
I want
Listen,
to.
I want to thank Badger and Phoenix Rider and Braytube and Curious and Tony from the Bronx and
I want to
everybody's been there.
address Curious before we end this. Please.
Oh, you got to address Curious. Go
I
on.
have to. I have to. This is important for everyone. You're a potential elected figure. Actually, no. I am currently sitting in an elected seat. I'm on a county committee for the Democrats, and it's an elected seat. So my name was already on the ballot, and I was already elected. So I'm already in that seat. That's number one. Number two, the Pledge of Allegiance is not patriotic at all. It actually goes against everything this country stands for. When you're pledging allegiance, you are pledging fealty to a cloth, to a piece of cloth. I'm sorry, that's what they do in North Korea. That is not what Americans do. No, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the original pledge wasn't even your hand on your heart. It was like this.
Oh, my goodness.
No. That is the most un-American thing you can ask someone to do. So as an American, I reserve the right to say no.
So, and isn't patriotism part of the job? I dare you to find, like, let's say 12 people who all agree on what it is to be patriotic as an American. I dare you.
Yeah,
Also,
pretty
you know
hard.
the difference between Hitler and a gay man? About 45 degrees. Sorry. I love that joke. That joke slays me. It's like the first time a friend of mine said it to me, I laughed for like 10 minutes. It's horrible, but I love it.
Oh,
That
geez.
reminds me of another joke I heard once. What's the difference between a heterosexual man and a bisexual man? 6 beers.
What was
Yeah,
that?
6 beers. Yeah,
Oh,
6 beers.
Okay. What does a lesbian bring on the second date? A U-Haul. Yeah. Oh, you know what came before the Big Bang? The big second date. I got a ton of these.
I got the U-Haul part.
Having other than I've known a few lesbians in my life. My aunt is a lesbian, and there is this thing with lesbians. They go on a date and then boom, one did with the other. And it's just like, seriously, you really need to not jump into relationships so fast, because they end up screaming at each other in a parking lot somewhere.
Oh, I could okay, hold my beer. How about giving mouth to mouth after your like then girlfriend passes out and stops breathing? Well, it turns out it wasn't the crack she was smoking. No, it was the brain tumor. And you stand by her while she has it removed, and then she dumps you. Yeah.
Don't.
Okay,
Ouch.
there's a reason I'm terrified of dating, and it's mostly that bitch.
Yeah, right. I
Yeah,
can blame you.
understandable there.
Hi, Peach. Nice bump you got there.
Aw.
Oh,
Here it is.
again,
Not
are we?
Not anymore.
Right on. Okay, again, I want to say thanks to everybody for hanging out. It's been a great show. It's been interesting, and I think the conversation was particularly a lot of fun when we were bashing the audience. Let's do that more next time.
Yay.
Oh, yeah.
I like that.
Anyway, to all my lovely audience members, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next week here on the Breakfast Club. Peace and joy.
Much like to play.
Oops, right on. And then